I feel like almost every year on my like New Year's resolution, new fishing year, like getting better and fishing big baits more and catching more big bass on swim baits is like something I plan to do every single year. And I usually do a little bit and dabble in it. But I do know like some of our most popular shows and requested shows are big bait swim bait shows because I think whether people are like ate up with it or they love it already. At least most of us have a curiosity or fascination, or there's an allure to the big bass or the big baits and the swim baits. So tonight's show, we try to do a couple of them every season. Is definitely going to be big bait centric swim bait. So look forward to having all your questions. But you guys probably know I'm not a big bait expert. I like to dabble. I own some decent baits. I collect some of the good baits, but I'm definitely not an expert. So I brought some friends tonight to help out. So I'm going to start introducing them here one by one, bringing them into the show. We're going to have definitely a roundtable. The screen will be filled tonight. So before we cover up the screen with all the guests, as always, HellaBass Live is presented by Arsenal Fishing, and as always, boosted by Powerhouse Lithium. Definitely codes down in the description if you guys want to check out and support the show and get some good deals on some products. But otherwise, let's get into the big bait talk. So I'm going to start bringing in some people here. So we got Kyle.
What's up?
Self-proclaimed regional bait maker. We'll probably just kind of rapid fire bring people in here from Throwback Baits, and then Doug also Throwback Baits, and we got Alec joining the show as well. So we'll kind of do some roundtable intros here. We were going to also have a good friend Dave Cindrich, who's been on the show before and has talked swim baits, so people might remember him. But he decided to like chop part of his finger off today. So it doesn't look that bad. I'll probably bring up the picture later for fun, or maybe he'll just dial in from the ER. He's got the link. He could definitely mobile phone in. So that could be a surprise kind of little spice of life for the show tonight. But so he definitely pulled this thing together, and then like 2 hours ago he's like, guys, it might be late, guys, I might not make it. And so I honestly don't really know Kyle, Alec, and Doug that well. Like I don't really know a ton about their history. I'm definitely pretty sure I've never met them in person, but we all share a passion for fishing and different levels of interest in big baits. So we're just gonna unpack this and learn and definitely chat. Let the questions fly on big baits, whether it's like, how do you get started, rod choices, hard bait, swim bait, line, blah, blah, blah. I'll start starring them and we'll start plugging away at those as we go through. So maybe just why don't you kind of introduce yourself, Alec, since you're kind of flying solo, and then we'll kind of let the throwback guys kind of tag team their intro, maybe.
Yeah, Alec Wieker. I've been throwing swim baits for, I don't know, like 8 or 9 years now, I think. And Dave and I founded the Freezer Bass Off. It used to be called Freezer Ass Off, but for political reasons, we changed to Freezer Bass Off. But we founded that a couple years ago. This will be our 3rd year doing it. And that's just basically a swim bait only smallmouth tournament on the Mississippi River every February. And then I also work with Leviathan rods, release my own signature series with them. It's a muskie specific swim bait rod. Pretty excited about that, and that was just released a couple weeks ago. So
right on. Kyle, Doug, who wants to go first?
Doug,
go for it.
Oh, me. I'm Kyle. I started Throwback here 4 years ago now, just out of my garage, right out the backyard here. I've been doing it ever since. In April 2 years ago, was it? We got the shop in Maple Grove, and that's when we brought Doug on full time. And now Doug's a partner as well, and we run a pretty tight ship and have a big crew of people building swim baits for a living. So life's good. I'm very thankful.
Yeah, pretty much met Kyle through the love of swim bait, and I think I saw his first social media post on a hand-carved wake walker, but reached out, started fishing, kind of joined forces with go back to the day of pouring baits in his garage, and then kind of join forces here in what it is today. But as far as throwing swim baits, probably 7-8 years. Used to be big in the tournament scene, familiar with all the local clubs and trails local to the Twin Cities and throughout Minnesota, and did a lot of that, and just decided to make the switch after I caught my first big fish on a swim bait, and it was all over from there. So
right on. Very cool. Yeah. And so tonight we got people that are probably pretty interested, have fished them, and everything from John Goss checking in. Within 10 minutes of throwing glide, he thinks he has zero idea. So we got people full range of experience. Sam's glad you guys could put the skateboards down and talk Swimbaits tonight. So.
That one. I feel like that's directed at me
probably,
for some reason.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's definitely directed at Kyle.
I can't skateboard anymore, so I don't know what he's talking about.
Adventures of Pumpkin says he's excited for the new Wake Walker.
Oh yeah,
I think somebody else.
That.
There was another one I saw. Yeah, Chase said got his new Lemonade Metro today, so that's a throwback bait.
Thanks, Chase.
I think you got one handy, right? Didn't you have one?
Right there, giveaway.
Oh yeah.
Let me just go ahead and throw that up there for a little bit longer there. So that'll be given away later on the show tonight. Sting with it, hang out. We'll be and then also we do got a couple baits from DC Swimbaits. Dave Cindrich has got a couple baits. We'll talk about those, but just kind of a teaser. We'll get into that.
Take a shot every time someone says pink lemonade tonight. That would be a long night.
There you go.
Good thing I'm sitting on a couch. That's funny. What a troll.
Yeah.
Who invited this kid?
All right, cool. Right on. So maybe, I don't know a ton about throwback baits. Maybe let's start with there. I know you definitely got some hard baits and some glides. I saw in I've heard of them. I saw some posts. I've seen some of your baits online. I kind of snooped around your profile, noticed you guys actually in your stories, it seems like you got a pretty legitimate shop. So a lot of, well, at least when I look at swim baits and things online or on Instagram and stuff, a lot of times I think of garage basement produced, and so far you guys obviously have taken off now. You guys got a shop, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, very much started like mom and pop. That's my house, 20 feet that way. I had heated 2-stall garage with a little gas heater back there, and it was for 2 years. It was just me pouring baits, mixing baits, sanding, painting, everything by myself. And I had 4 kids at the time, so my main hours of operation were 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. when no one was asleep, or when everyone was asleep. So that's how it started. It was as grassroots as possible, and it was just me. And then brought Billy on in the fall one time and got some help from him, and then we brought Doug on soon after, and we got the shop. So yeah, our roots are very, very much grassroots, mom and pop. Garage built baits, and then we just took the operation, and it has allowed us to scale and get a lot more baits into production and into people's hands. But yeah, we've got, I think, 9 or 10 Doug baits in production now.
Yeah,
all hard baits at the moment. Yeah, and then we're working on soft bait right now that should hopefully be ready for spring. So just really kind of getting into every avenue that we can and learning as much as possible. And we're getting into the ABS mass produced world as well in the spring. So just trying to grow.
So is that what you're talking about, the Metro Softy? Is that the new bait or the soft baits are coming?
Yeah, it's probably the Metro Soft. Yeah, the soft bait's got the same profile as the Metro Glide with obviously a different tail. So we kind of kept the cohesive brand look that we have with most of our baits and kept it flowing into the soft bait world. So, yeah.
All right, so this is Throwback website. There's the so people want to check stuff out, things you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a shop right there.
You can go on here.
Or the garage, I should say.
So there's the lineup. Looks like there's 11. No,
that's just what's in stock currently. Yeah. So, following social media is the best way. These things sell out quick. Following social media is really the best way to stay on top of some of the drops. I mean, I think you scroll past the Gracely collab. That one in the top left went on the website at 7 o'clock tonight and sold out. It was a limited quantity collab, but I mean, they sell out quick. So, the social media aspect's definitely the way to follow along with drops. We also have a newsletter that we send out. Good way to keep up to date. But yeah, that's what we currently have in stock, or in some cases out of stock. But yeah, quite a few options. I mean, there you see the wake and fleece shads. We have a large and a small glide bait. We have a crawler. We have a bunny, 2 bunnies. you know. So yeah, quite a few options in regards to product.
Right on. Cool. Very cool. And so what got you into like you said it kind of seems like you guys got scaled pretty quickly. What was the how'd you get into building garage baits?
It was 2020. I had like a wedding photography, videography business, and 2020 came around with COVID, and the shutdown happened, and everything was gone. So I went from like shooting 30 weddings a year, and I'm the only one who works fully support my family. So that went away, and it was quickly like, all right, time to figure out something to do. I had just gotten into big baits via Oliver Nye. I did some work with him video wise, and he kind of introduced me to the big bait stuff. And I had a couple baits, and I was like, I'm just going to carve my own bait. And I carved one, and I thought, I'm just going to document the process of this. So I made an Instagram page, and I'm like, all right, well, I don't know. It was just it was very organic and natural, really. There's no intention behind it, but carved the bait, made the Instagram page, came up with the name Throwback, just liked it, made a little, following out of it. And all of a sudden people were like, when are you going to start selling them? When are you selling them? I'm like, I don't know. Wasn't planning on it. So that kind of forced my thumb to like sell a batch, and they went really quick. We made a little bigger batch, and they sold fast. Then we made 40, and they sold really fast. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And when we sold that first batch of 40, I looked at Nicolette, and I was like, I think we might have something here. So we just took the momentum. We ended up getting like the original Wake Walker that we hand carves, refined via Row Innovations, who is a mold company out east, and they kind of helped me dial that in, and got me my first set of production molds. And then from there, my mom was like my first employee, I guess, who helped me pour all the baits. So she would pour them, and I would sand them and paint them all. So yeah, it's just like me and my mom in the back garage, Nicolette every now and then, like 2 a.m. grinding out baits. It's crazy. And then we went to the Swimbait gathering out east in Virginia, and that kind of just helped us grow our roots in the community. And I met Doug out there. I think I met Doug, actually. This is a funny story. I met Doug at the lake 30 minutes from my house at 10 o'clock at night. He was like, show up at the ramp. And I'm like, all right, I'm either going to get shot, taken, or we're going to have a good time. We had a good time. We fished. That's where we met. But yeah, it's just, they just snowballed so organically into this business. And then it was just a matter of like realizing what was going on and capitalizing on it and letting it grow. So it's been crazy ever since. It's been really cool.
Very cool. Yeah. So like these are all like what you consider like resin hand pour type baits.
Yep.
We do have one wood model currently, which is the bunny. And the reason for that, we had a couple wood models, I guess, at one point. It just became more efficient, more cost effective for everybody to do resin, except for the one model in particular. It's a knocking bait. It's a 2-piece bait. And really the process of the wood and the epoxy is what makes it knock. So I think that one will stick around for a while. But yeah, otherwise a lot of resin baits.
Very cool. Nice. So is that your full-time gig, or is it so it's grown that fast that that's kind of taken over for your main focus? And
yeah, when when the lockdown like kind of ended, I shot like maybe 5 weddings the first year and 5 the next year, and then it was 2.5 years ago, about 6 months before we got the shops. Yeah, 2.5 years ago that I went full-time Throwback and just stopped videography work, and then it's been full-time ever since. So, and we've got Doug, Billy, Doug and Billy partners with me, and then 8 employees.
Yeah.
Wow.
8 employees. So it's crazy.
Yeah. So you're cranking out a decent amount of baits then.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. We've gotten into a lot of wholesale now with, a lot of shops worldwide now. We've sent baits to Spain, Australia, just kind of really like not turning anything down. So it's been doing us good.
Right on. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And I suppose you still got the skills to shoot some good footage for your own social media and stuff.
Yeah.
You get to scratch the itch by doing like promos of your own.
Yeah, we did like that. That was the bread and butter of our pink lemonade, was like all of the all of the stuff that we shot for it, and you know, it just pumped out so much content for it, and it just like spread like wildfire. So yeah, it's cool to see like old skill sets of videography and photography kind of blend over into this. It's very helpful.
So is the pink lemonade just a color of
yeah,
the
it's
bait?
Marshall's.
What is
yeah,
the whole story like? Because I guess I just started seeing that recently as well. So obviously it got some hype. What is the story behind the pink
so it's
lemonade?
funny that actually was so Lateral Vision is a fishing company out in California, and they reached out to us and they were like, hey, they were pretty close with Marshall at the time, the homeless fisherman, and they were like, hey, do you guys want to do like a trifecta kind of collaboration where Marshall comes up with the color, we make the bait, and then we sell some merch as well. And it was like a package. So Marshall came up with the idea. He's like, hey, what do you think about a pink lemonade color? And I sent him like 3 different variations of the paint, and he picked the one he liked the most. And it was just loud and obnoxious, and it was just his vibe, right? So it was Marshall's idea. And, you know, we did the Lateral Vision collab with it and everything. They just loved it. But we only did 25 baits. And then fast forward like a year after that, I don't think we touched anything pink lemonade forever. We dropped like a little, like a flea shad and something else with the pink lemonade, and never really pushed it hard. But then we ended up doing, what was the first drop we did, Doug? Was that June this year? This summer?
Yeah, for the Metros.
Yeah, that's right. So it was June that we did the big first drop where we did all like the media for it. We made like a cool reel and shot videos with big cameras and just pushed it really hard. And then that went really well. And then it was right before Christmas where we did the second drop where we did even more. And we did, again, we pushed it really hard and did
we
a lot.
We had no intention of doing it again.
Yeah, we didn't. We forced our hands. Yeah, I did say from the beginning, I was like, this is a one-time thing. And then it was like, 50 messages a week. Bring back the pink lemonade. Bring back the pink lemonade. And we're like, okay, be stupid not to do this. So, you know, I apologized and said that I was wrong for saying it was a one-time thing. And I ate my words and I made it very clear to people that I was wrong. But I'm never going to say that again. But yeah, we did the second batch. And like, we're like, it's so funny. We're like, yeah, all these messages that people had sent us for months were like, don't worry, we're making so many, you'll be able to get one for your boyfriend for Christmas. Don't worry. They're freaking gone. We made more than we did the first time, and they're gone in a minute, and my heart just sank. I was like, fuck. I just felt we sold some more baits than we ever had in the shortest amount of time, and all I felt was awful because I was like, dude, we just disappointed a lot of people. So then we came up with the idea to do the pre-order, like the lit what's the time we have like a time frame with the pre-order. So we essentially said like, hey, we know what we're capable of making. We have all the supplies. Like, you know, pre-orders get a bad rap. A lot of times people do pre-orders to like buy supplies, have the money up front. And then sometimes timelines get wishy-washy, and it's never seems to go well. So we went into it and they made it very clear, like, this is what we're capable of. This is what we know. As soon as the 24-hour pre-order closes, we'll give you an accurate timeline, and all the baits were shipped before the deadline. So it went really well.
I don't know what you're talking about, Kyle. I think Swimbait pre-orders classically go phenomenally.
Yeah, have a really good rap. People love
it. Yeah.
I mean, I think there probably is a decent amount that do, but there's the ones that don't go well you hear about, and they get plastered all over Facebook, right? And then
No, that was purely sarcastic. They're that.
No, I mean, but
always,
you don't hear about the ones that go well, right? Nobody goes and brags about how great a pre-order experience they had, right? They only complain about, and obviously there's a handful of people that are notorious for doing some weird things with pre-orders. And if you want to catch up on that, just go to your favorite Swimbait group on Facebook, and you can read all about it.
Yeah, but it did go really well. I think we gave a deadline that they would ship this week, and we got them all out last week and started shipping them even the week before. And there was a significant amount of them. So nailed it, and on to other things now. So.
Very cool. Yeah, so it's obviously all made in Maple. The Throwback's all made in Maple Grove, Minnesota. So that's pretty cool.
The heart of America.
It's not even the heart of Minnesota, I don't think. But,
it's close.
So you guys obviously probably dabble in all. I guess Alec, like, what are you? More a hard bait guy? You more of a soft bait guy? You like it all? What's kind of your poison or your weak spot in this, or your passion in the swim bait area?
Yeah, I mean, I I mean, just swim baits in general, man. I don't discriminate necessarily. I just like throwing like as big a baits as possible to manage the biggest of any species. Really, I guess if I had to choose like a niche for myself, it'd be maybe swim bait multi-species probably. But yeah, I throw everything, and I have for. I mean, I started swim baiting when the Gantarelle came out. Like the reg size Gantarelle, that was when I started swim baiting. I got that, and then I basically I thought it was nonsense pretty much. It's like a 6-inch bait. I was like, there's no shot a largemouth is gonna eat this. Like no chance. Went to a lake, and I have a lake back home in Minnesota that's like, you can go out and, well, back in the day, I could catch a 4-pounder every day, and I thought that was crazy. Like that was, 4-pound largemouth every single day. I was pumped. Then I think my first day out of the Gantarelle, I had I think it was 5 or 6 over 4 pounds, and I was like, oh no, it's game over, dude. Like I was like, oh no, so I've been hooked since then, pretty much, and I throw softies, I throw hard baits a bunch, pretty much anything, and I'd say primarily muskies, a lot of smallies, a lot of largemouth. I've caught giant stripers, wipers, brown trout. What else? I don't know, a bunch of stuff. And I just kind of throw swim baits for everything all the time. So.
Yeah, right on. Cool. I think I'm going to kind of look for a few questions here, see what's kind of come in here. We're definitely going to talk swim bait tournament here in a little bit. I think there's one kind of starter question. So Alex Yang asked, what's a good swim bait recommendation rod for under $200 for somebody to get started?
I mean, there's a couple of classics. I mean, the Dobbins Fury series is a classic. That's something that, if you ask that in a swim bait group, probably I don't know. Yeah, exactly. See, that's a classic. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. I think it's the 795.
795 and 806, but 795 is your most universal for sure.
I think the 806.
Yeah, the 795 is rated higher, 1 to 5 ounces.
Yeah, but the 795 I think is everybody's starter rod basically. The 806 is another Dobbins that's awesome, but I think that's a little bit pricier. I don't know. I've never had an 806 to be honest with you, but I think that's a 230 or something like that. I think the Fury series is a little bit cheaper. Other cheaper stuff like the Daiwa DX is that's like $100 rod. That's pretty decent. The medium heavy's good. The heavy's okay. The extra heavy's crazy bad. So, but yeah, there's a few rods out there that are decent. Stay away from 13 fishing. They all blow up. They're terrible. Okuma does pretty decent stuff actually. I'd go a little bit lighter on Okuma stuff just because it tends to be a little bit stiffer. But yeah, there's a bunch of different options. But if you ask that in the swim bait group, I'd say Fury is probably going to be 8 out of 10 guys go to most likely. Do you guys, Doug?
I agree 100%. And
Okay.
actually, yeah. So there's a 795 Fury, but there is an 806 Fury that's in that price.
Oh,
point
there
here.
is.
So
But
the 795 for your baits, 1 to 4 ounce hard baits is the way to go. I mean, when you start talking soft baits, it's a little different story. But I mean, it'll throw a line through and anything like that. But the 795 is the way to go for sure. 835. I think the Buchholz series is a little more expensive.
Yeah.
I'm
still
not
under
sure
200 though, right?
But
I mean, I know that. Yeah, it's probably closer to 200, whereas the Furies are 130-ish, 140-ish.
The great thing is Dobbins are always on sale somewhere. I mean, you can get a deal. I think Tackle Warehouse was just running 20-25% off, so you can always get a good deal on a Dobbins rod, and they are, one of the better bangs for your buck for sure.
And I guess reels is probably a logical next step there. I think a lot of guys, I think most 200 or 300 size reels are going to get the majority done for guys. I think even I would, if you're starting in swim baits, a good 200 is probably all you need. I don't think 300 is necessarily something that you need starting right away. But I think, everybody go-tos are going to be a TAT 200, like a Daiwa Tatula 200, or a Corrado K 200. Those are pretty relatively cheap, and you're going to get a reel that'll last you a couple years, and it gets everything you need to get done.
Agreed. I have so many messages. Oh, hey, do I need a 300? What 300 size reel do I need for your Metro? And it's like, I think a lot of people jump right to, I need the biggest thing I can get, and it's really not the case. I mean, even with lines, and we can get into all of that, but it's really, whatever you're comfortable with conventional wise, just bump it up a little bit, really. And half the stuff I throw in, conventional type gear anyhow, but
yeah, like a Metro, I'm throwing a Metro on my the Tatula 100 and a Leviathan 7'7" rod, like the 777. That's literally what I throw a Metro on. Like, it's not, you don't, just because you're throwing a Swimbait doesn't mean you need a Swimbait dedicated setup. You know what I mean? Like, if you learn quickly that lighter gear can also help you out in a lot of different ways too, instead of overthrowing.
Yeah, you can overpower the Metro Glide. Like I tell people that all the time. I'm like, listen, let the rod, like if you throw it on finesse like Doug does, like it has the perfect give to it. Well,
yeah.
No, I love the finesse because like you get like a little softer tip, and it like dampens the inputs a bit, so you have a little bit more control. But if you overpower that, like it can get squirrely.
Mm-hmm.
So, like start lower and then work your way up if anything, really.
100%, totally agree. And I know Marshall would absolutely agree with me as well.
It's true.
Marshall's like
Marshall will throw the ghost on like a medium heavy.
Yeah, a king on. Marshall and I fished. He fished a king for like half the time we fished one day, and dude was throwing a king on a medium heavy rod for like 3 hours. I wouldn't even do that. There's no way. Oh man,
it's crazy.
And yeah, a Sitica would be fine. A Sitica 200. I mean, it's a 200 size reel to get the job done. At the after you throw the Sitica, you'll realize whether or not the swim baiting thing is for you, and you'll either quickly spend half your paycheck every month on it, or you will just not do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, just from I see a lot of people going out even buying like 790 Fury 795s to throw like these, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you definitely don't even really need a swim bait rod to throw like a 6-inch boot tail, especially like a mega bass or like a coal shad or something like that. I use like a Dobbins 764 for like throwing that type of stuff. Like basically a jig rod with a little bit softer tip is really more than enough for most of those like starter soft swim baits with exposed treble hooks and things like that. But
100%. Yeah, a good flipping stick you can throw like any softy under 6 inches, really. I mean, for the most part, like even a HUD, even like a 68 HUD or something would be an easy throw on a flipping stick.
Sometimes it's nice to have a little bit softer action. I mean, it depends on. I mean, flipping sticks are all over the board as far as fast action and that kind of stuff. It's nice to have a little bit of let them suck it in, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're just getting into it, right? Like you don't need to be maximally efficient if you're just starting or just figuring out if you like it,
Yeah. So I guess we talked rods and reels. Maybe like, what are your guys' line preferences? I don't know if you guys are all going to be aligned or have different preferences or where you guys land on that. So I guess I would say, and if you differ, right, if you throw hard baits on one thing and soft baits on another, if you have different preferences for different style baits, like let's hear what you guys think of line.
I'm a big Abrasics fan. I mean, and a lot of it's split in the swim bait world, right? But I used some Abrasics back when, throwing jigs and stuff like that. And I tried different lines. You'll read things. There's so much information out there, and you got to find what works for you. It's really what you have confidence in. You'll read about Copoly. You'll read about braid to leader. But really, after trying everything, I went back to Abrasics. I mean, as far as pound test, it varies, and definitely on the baits I'm throwing and the structure I'm fishing, but Abrasics all the way for me.
So just straight 20, 25 pound fluoro, or how?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'll go down to 15, 15, 17, but yeah, most of it's 17 to 20. If I'm throwing the big stuff, I'll throw 25, but depends where you're fishing.
The Adventures of Pumpkin is correct. I'm all FC Sniper. I love FC Sniper. Ever since I tried it, it was just the best. And like it is, I mean, it's floral, so it's like a sinking, but I'll throw like wakes on it. That just, I don't know. It's been like buttery smooth. I have no issues with it. It lasts a long time. It doesn't nick. It doesn't fray. I have like ever since getting to know Marshall more, I do dumb down like my pound test rating for everything. Like I might, I'll throw the Metro on 14-pound sniper, and then I throw the Retro on. I think they make a 17-pound sniper. If I'm throwing like, I don't throw anything bigger than the Retro. Yeah, I don't even have 20-pound on anything. It's just 14 and 17. So, yeah.
And so the Metro is what, a 7 inch?
Yep,
2 ounce
7
bait?
inch 2 ounce bait.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and a Retro Glide is the 9.5 inch 5.5 ounce bait. You could have no problem throwing in a 20-pound test. I just got the 17 because it was different. I want to give it a shot.
You definitely are probably a little bit lighter than a lot of guys would say, like pound test wise, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say for me, I'm a big mono hard bait guy, and then I'll do either fluoro or braid the leader with softies, depending on where I'm fishing, like what I'm fishing. But mono for hard baits exclusively, pretty much. I'm a big fan of like thin wire trebles, and that stretch with mono helps me out with that. I like to go like finesse, I guess, on as much as finesse as you can on swim baits, really. But mono and Suffix Advanced is probably my favorite. And then soft bait wise, it's just like either fluoro if I'm going super clear water. So I started fishing. Well, this isn't great, but the fluoro, I classically don't like fluoro that much because I've had a few like how fluoro sometimes like combust for no reason. Sometimes I've had a few experiences where it like just combusts on hook sets, so I kind of steered away from it for a long time. So I don't have a fluoro that I've like locked down necessarily as my favorite. Right now I'm using Tatsu because I found a couple of spools of it on Amazon for like 70% off. So, but I love Tatsu. It's sweet. It's a great line, like zero memory and super strong. But also it's offensively expensive. So not something I would throw unless it was ridiculous. It was like, it's like a 200-yard spool for like $80, and it was marked down to like $30, and I was like, well, screw it. I mean, whatever.
Normal price line at that point.
Oh, it was horrible. Yeah, exactly. So that's the only reason I have it, because it was the same price as every other fluoro, and it was Tatsu. And then mostly for softies, I've thrown braid the leader, just like on bigger softies, like 80 to 20, or on smaller softies, 65 to 20 kind of thing. I just like braid for the sensitivity and like phenomenal hook sets. But fluoro down where I'm at right now in Arizona, where the water's like gin clear and the fish are geniuses. It's something that I don't know if it really truly matters, but I've been doing it anyways.
You have it, 3 different answers. That's exactly what you'll get asking on any forum.
Yeah.
I mean, and the biggest thing
mono, so I was kind of disappointed.
whatever you have confidence in is the route I say you go with it. You know, if you need upsize, but whatever you have confidence in. I
mean, realistically, like whatever you're throwing on conventional, like just take a similar application and upsize it. Like it's really, if you trust a line, it's gonna, for the most part, act similarly between sizes. So if you trust a line, if you throw something on a jig rod, right, up your jig line that you use to a soft swim bait. If you're throwing a crankbait or a jerk bait rod, upsize that to what you're throwing on hard baits. Like, it shouldn't be that much different if you trust the line that you like.
Yeah, I guess what are your guys' thoughts on the watch outs, right? You hear about, right, like braid can be very unforgiving when it digs in, right? That's a good way that even though you're throwing 60, 80-pound braid, like if it digs in on a heavy, 5-ounce bait, it's a good way to snap one off and send it into the oblivion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing where if you're throwing bigger baits, generally you're throwing a thicker line, and the thicker lines tend to dig far, far less than a thinner line would. So I think that helps naturally, because, the amount of digging you're getting on a, 80-pound braid is substantially less than 20 or 30 or whatever. So
that's so sick.
Oh no.
This is kind of I've actually got a Dobbins Mike Long swim bait rod. Signature series Mike Long.
Is it actually?
Yeah. This is actually the old Mike Long rod.
That's incredible.
Before the whole thing came out, like he had a signature series with Dobbins years ago.
Wow.
So it actually is. There's a
Eon.
Yeah.
It's a good glide.
Spotted at the classic. It's surprising. I've thrown it a little bit. Fun. Like it really hops. Like it's got a very active. Trying to look where it says the. Yeah. I don't know. It's probably too hard to really see that, but it's definitely the Mike Long signature series. But
That's pretty sick. Be my snagging rod.
120-pound big game.
Go down to the creek, just absolutely rip into some carp on
Is
that.
this legal at the Swimbait tournament to throw a Mike Long rod? Or
honestly, I think
Big
it's
old white twister tail on there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Ask Dave.
I feel like a grotto's locked up or something. What is going on here?
That's funny.
I feel like my Swimbait reel might have just died. Ooh, well, I need a cleaning. All right, here. What else is so cool? Yeah, I guess that was another kind of a follow-up rod question here. Kevin wants to know: is a good bladed jig rod a good Swimbait rod?
A lot of swim baits are going to overpower it. I mean, it depends what you're throwing. I mean, the load up be good, but it really depends. A lot of them are going to overpower that rod. I'm guessing.
So I think if your definition of a swim bait is that, probably yes.
Yeah.
If your definition of a swim bait is something like this or bigger, then maybe the chatterbait rod's not the answer.
Right.
Is that a fair assessment?
Yep.
All right, so here's a question. Kind of seen this. Like, do you guys, if you have serious toothy concerns, do you guys ever dabble with the big floral leaders?
Alec.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, like I said, I'd say my main species is probably muskies, but I think if I'm fishing pretty much if I fish any lake, any river, anything with pike in it, not only for my own sake of not having a crisis if I lose a $150 glide or whatever, but also for the fish's sake, just so the fish are I can guarantee the fish's safety too. I'm throwing on pike only if I have if I know the lake well enough and I can confidently tell you that the biggest pike in there is 30 inches, I'll throw like a 60-pound fluoro leader. If I know that I'm going for if I'm at Lake of the Woods or if I'm in the boundary waters or Tonka when I'm not fishing bass on Tonka ever, but you know what I mean. Like if I know there's giant pike in there, if I know there's 40-inch class pike in there, I'm throwing more like closer to a muskie leader, like 80-pound fluoro. If I'm fishing muskies, I'm going 100, 120-pound fluoro, depending on the size class of the muskies that are in there. Like if I know the best side of the body of water is a 4-footer, I'll throw 100-pound. But if I know there's low mid 50s in there, I'm throwing 120. It really depends on the size of the fish you're working with. But yeah, it's just I think it's just the responsible thing to do to throw a 60-pound leader pretty much anywhere where there's pike, where there's pike. I mean, obviously there's certain times a year where you can guarantee pike will be in different places than the bass, right? Like you can, there's certain times a year, but there's always going to be crossover. There's always going to be some food chain action happening that's going to not be guaranteed. And I'm lucky enough where I haven't lost that many baits to pike ever. But also I'm constantly prepared too. You know what I mean? I've watched 3 different times a muskie bite clean through 120-pound fluoro. Well, twice a muskie bit clean through 120-pound, and then once I had a muskie break single strand piano wire. That was exceptional. But yeah, I've seen them just make leaders look like nothing. So, and that's a pretty common thing to add is it affects the action of the bait, and that it does cause a large problem, right? Because the wrong leader can really mess with a glide, especially like there's certain baits where you can get away with it, that they won't mess it up too bad. Anything that has a pretty aggressive action inherently is going to be relatively unaffected by a big leader. But a thing like a glide where balance is absolutely mandatory, you're going to get a lot of nose down with a leader that has a lot of material on it. Like a lot of these leaders come stock with a ball bearing swivel and a size 5 snap, and then there's crimps on it, and there's, they do all sorts of stuff. Whereas like if you throw metal leaders, that in itself is going to weigh down a glide a bunch. So you have to be careful in your leader choice as well. Like I tie all my own, and I make them as little material as physically possible. They're literally like I have them somewhere, but they're a solid welded ring to a snap, and that's the only hardware on there. And those leaders with minimal hardware are going to barely affect a glide, if any. Whereas some leaders, if they weigh a ton, and they're going to make that glide nose down, and the glide's going to be half as far as it would be. So the correct answer is the right size leader for the right size bait, depending on the species that you're targeting and how big that fish is. Right. So I'm
going to touch on that too from a conventional perspective. Fishing tournaments and stuff like that, there's pike. I mean, you lose tungsten jigs and whatever else all the time, and it's something, but you don't throw a leader because it's going to inhibit your bites, right? That's the mentality. Throwing a drop shot with 6 or 8 pound tests to get those extra bites. And I started fishing with Alec and opened my eyes up a little bit to that. We went up to Mille Lacs last year, and throwing swim baits, and you're using a leader, 1 for the pike and muskie, the toothy critters. 2, it's protecting you from losing a bait to them zebra mussels. And I'm throwing around a TK up there with a 60, 80 pound leader that Alec tied, and I caught a 6.5 pound smallie. So if you're concerned about the lie shyness and once I did that, I mean, I had zero concern about lie shyness. I mean, are you missing some fish? Sure. But if a fish is eating a 6, 7, 8, 10-inch bait,
they don't care.
They're not concerned about your line. So I think that's one thing from a conventional standpoint. Guys would be like, well, I don't want to throw a leader. I don't want it to mess up the action. I don't want to deter fish. You're fishing for a different class of fish. And I'm not talking just bigger fish, but a fish that's going to eat that bait is not concerned about your line.
So I guess, why do you guys normally throw 17 pound, 15 pound fluoro if you don't think the line, is it more for the action or more for the visibility, or?
Let's say more for that. It's just not a need.
Yeah. I don't know. You just lose a lot of sensitivity when you're overpowering. Like if you throw a glide bait on 25 pound tests, and then you throw it on the 17 pound, I personally just think you lose a lot of action or sensitivity, I guess, in a way. And it just seems like, I don't know, ever since I tried the lighter setups, I wouldn't go lighter than that. I wouldn't there's no reasoning going lighter than that. It's just had success with the 14 pound for the Metro Glide, and the Metro Glide, like I said, responds really well to really small inputs. So you have just a little bit extra sensitivity with that really light line, personally. Yeah.
Cause I mean, clearly there's pretty much not a body of water in Minnesota where there's not pike.
Right.
And do you guys, I guess from your guys' perspective, do you really think it's the big pike that swallow it is the bigger risk, or is it the smaller pike that try to headshot your bait is the bigger risk?
I mean, it's definitely both. I mean, the smaller pike headshotting it, any pike, any muskie will headshot a bait and miss every once in a while. Like one of the leader breaks I was talking about, I had a buddy of mine, not me, but I had probably a 4-footer boat side, was working a bulldog. Ripped the bulldog, the muskie went up to eat it, missed the bulldog entirely, got a mouthful of leader and cut clean through the leader. It got 0 bulldog and got all leader and just cut straight through it. And that, like I said, that's a 120 pound fluoro. That's a no joke leader, and just ripped right through it. So obviously that can happen with any size fish, but then also I've also watched 40-inch muskies take a pounder bulldog and choke it to halfway up the leader, man. They pull disappearing acts like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it's crazy to watch how much they can just deep throat a giant bait. So it's both ways. I had another fish one time, another muskie, choke a K9 to halfway up the leader, and I watched him come up and thrash, and you can just see his teeth just grating through that leader with every thrash. And he eventually, that was one of the other very, very few instances where I've had a leader break, but he just sawed through it basically. over time. So it's both. It's both. I will say that I've never had a truly like small fish break through a leader, whether it was a headshot or swallowing the bait. All of them were very high caliber fish eating the bait. And that's just, whether that's, I don't know what that is, whether it's tooth size or just capability of or strength or capability to get the whole bait in their mouth. But generally small fish are not a worry. Like, and a lot of times I'll go lighter on my leader or not use a leader at all if I'm in like really shallow, clear water in the spring and I'm watching a lot of my eats, because shallow, clear water in the spring, fewer pike, I'm watching my eats on glides and I can pull it from them if I need to, kind of thing.
I'm going to do one more question here, and then I want to get into the Swimbait tournament before we forget about that. So Will asks, he's got hard baits that he feel like just naturally helicopter when casting them. Any recommendations? Is it like technique or anything, mods, or that's just like life with certain baits? Any thoughts?
I would say life with certain baits. A lot of like the lighter ABS baits that could be a balance thing too, but like, I mean, TK's kind of helicopter quite often, in my opinion.
When you say TK, you're talking
Tiny
about
Clash, a DRT Tiny Clash, which is an ABS.
You gotta remember, not everybody knows all the abbreviations and all the lingo, so you guys gotta.
Tiny Clash. Tiny Clash is a DRT bait, right there. You go. Yep. Yeah, and that's like a lighter ABS bait, and sometimes the weight is spread out the way it is on that. I would say some technique, you'll kind of figure out what works for casting techniques for each bait. But yeah, there's certain baits that like you can't get away from it. But a lot of the resin baits are a lot like heavier and a little more like the weight's a little dispersed. I just think of like the Metro Glide when you throw that, like, or the bunny, for example. The bunny's like a little bullet. Just send that thing and it just goes right through the air. Like there's aerodynamics. So yeah, I would say it's bait to bait. Doug, Alec.
Yeah, I mean, I would say maybe experiment with like an overhead cast versus a side cast, but there are just baits that just helicopter like crazy, and there's not much you can do about it. Like I said, try an overhead cast, side cast, maybe a lob cast, like try a little bit differently, but you just have to accept that there's just going to be some baits where your casting distance is going to be a quarter and it's going to look like hell the whole time. So
weight on the lure did bring up some good. So thumbing the spool, you can thumb the spool to get it essentially to turn the bait towards you, just a little bit of tension. I've like practiced that a lot to keep, if you're fouling a lot on casts where it's helicoptering and you're getting the hooks caught and then you waste a cast, like if you thumb the spool and you get that bait to turn towards you while it's flying away, it's definitely a good idea. So not a bad tip.
Yeah, absolutely.
Similar principle to like just even throwing a spook, right? Like,
yeah,
or a 3-hook topwater. Like if you're, how you load the rod and bring it through will affect some of that for sure. Cool. Well, let's talk about, maybe not everybody knows this Swimbait shindig here. It's kind of a unique event, I would say. Unfortunately, my wife has booked tickets to Puerto Vallarta leaving on February 15th. So again, I will not be participating. I pretty much either am in Mexico or in a hockey tournament or a soccer, pretty much every time these events go off. But Alec, do you want to kind of take the lead on this one? So you and Dave Cindrich, I think, right? Kind of got this off the ground. Is this the third? Fourth?
Yeah, this is the third year. So Dave,
third year.
Dave basically reached out to me a couple of years ago and was like, "Hey, I want to do a Swimbait tournament at Monticello. Would you want to do it with me?" And first I was like, "Man, Dave, like that spot already is just infested with people. Like, I don't know if I want to do this." And I was like, "Oh wait, it's already crap. So we might as well just the spot's already just like the bite, like compared to how it used to be, man." But I was like, the damage is done basically. Might as well have a blast. So he just reached out to me, and our whole goal is to basically just like, I don't know if you fished there much, have you?
Not as much recently because it's so busy, and but I'm familiar with the area. I've definitely been up there. I've fished with Dave up there.
Okay, cool.
Sure.
So it's just the amount of trash, dude. Like those live baiters come and they just throw their trash, and at every single spring you walk through there, there's just like these mounds of trash. It's pretty sad. So, and the Mississippi in general is not a necessarily a super clean place. So the goal was basically just to like have an event for swim baiters in Minnesota. Definitely not a gathering or like a toxic day or any, like of that kind of nature, but close enough to where we can have like this gathering in Minnesota and basically do our part and clean up the river and make it as do our jobs as anglers and take care of our bodies of water. That was kind of the goal. We didn't really like expect a ton out of it. Like we were hoping for a few guys to come and kind of compete for like some of Dave's baits and maybe some real praise, some guys that we're close with, and then we started reaching out to people to see if they wanted to contribute. And I reached out to a few of my close friends who are bait makers, like Kyle and Doug and like Trashy and Clickbait and Lowbrow and all these relatively big names in swim baits, and it just kind of got a little bit of traction, and more people kept donating. And you can see on the site now we have almost 50 contributors this year, and some pretty big names on there, like really cool companies like Piz this year and Chocolate and Dave, and we have Savage Depths. Right, Depths is sending us like 20 baits. There's a ton of like Depths hard baits. We have like Okuma is sending us a reel and a rod and stuff. KGB is going to send us a bait. Leviathan is sending a rod per usual. Leviathan sends a rod every year. Savage Gear sent us 50 baits. Fish Lab sent us 50 baits. Oxbow's coming. Bunch of cool names. And this year we're working with the city of Monticello as well. They're providing us an area. They provide the dumpsters. They're providing some food, bunch of free food as well. It's cool. And he basically what I'm trying to say is it kind of just grew a lot bigger than we thought it was going to that first year. And it went really well, and it was really fun. I had like 50 guys show up, or 60 guys show up. And then the second year had like 50 something guys show up. And this year we have, almost 50 contributors. It should be the biggest year that we've had yet. We have some people flying in from Montana, from Arizona, from Missouri. Daniel with Clickbait's going to be there to do a soft release of his new glide bait. I don't know. It's just a good time. A bunch of good guys, all swim baiting, and just like-minded dudes eating free food and winning a bunch of free baits, basically.
So basically it's a swim bait only, and I think you guys got definitions of what a swim bait is in here.
Yep, 6 inches head to tail is what our mandate is. So it needs to be 6 inches. So
I mean, you literally, also, if you want, you can throw one of these, or you can throw.
Yep, 100%. You can throw a 250 if you wanted to. A 10-inch glide bait. You can throw, as long as it's above 6 inches. Any hard bait or soft bait. There are kind of some exceptions to that rule. Like we don't allow Kitex, which like that kind of stuff. Like yes, by like conventional standards is a swim bait, but it like, and to be honest with you, it's just not in the spirit of. Does that make sense? Like it's not.
So you're not looking for a 6.8 Kitex.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. It's not in the spirit of things. The spirit of things is like a big bait. Just
pre-rigged kind of, I guess.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. We get that question all the time. And to be honest with you, I don't have like a phenomenal answer for it because it's like, it's an almost 7-inch swim bait. Like I get it.
I guess it's not really, I mean, technically it's not much different than this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I mean, like if you want to just get it, like, this is not a pre-rigged bait, right? You put a beast hook on this. You can put a beast hook in a 7-inch Kitex, but I understand what you guys mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's weird to explain, and I don't have a great answer for it, but it's just kind of the culture. It's the mentality, and a Kitex doesn't fit that, if that makes any sense at all. If you're a swim baiter, you understand. Like if you're a hardcore swim baiter, you get it. But the conventional guys are always like, I don't get it, and I understand. That's totally fair.
Right. So, I think it starts at like 7:30. You got to be there. There's kind of a little rules meeting. You got to be back by 3. Smallmouth only, which there is like 4 largemouth that live in that river. So if you catch them, I guess,
and they're all 6 inches.
They're not very big, so it's unlikely that you would win the tournament with a largemouth. But But you basically have to like weigh show the fish right on a swim bait, and then show it on the weigh. Like maybe walk through what's the scoring process.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's difficult to. We want everybody to release their fish, obviously, and because it's mostly everybody's going to be fishing.
And it's legally you have to release the fish this time of year. So
yes, absolutely. But also like we don't want anybody putting anything in liable or whatever. So it's hard to mandate everything and keep everybody honest, but we do our best. We always, when everybody shows up in the morning, we have people raise their hands and give random numbers, and we just make a random number generator out of the people there basically to put it on your scale so that we know the video is taken that day. You're going to have to zero your scale without touching anything, without the fish interacting with the scale at all. You show the whole fish. You're going to show the inside of the fish's mouth. The fish has to be in the frame during the whole video. Then you weigh the whole fish on video without it leaving the frame, without manipulating the scale at all. And then we would really like people to release the fish on video. And if people do release the fish when they've taken their video, like during the video, we're going to give people a little bit more leniency so that the rules don't have to be absolutely perfect. Like, if you do a little mistake here and there, it'll be forgiven kind of thing. But if you don't release the fish on video, in other words, if you are keeping the fish for a little while to do multiple videos, we're going to be very strict with the rules. So basically, it's just to do our best to make sure that there's no cheating involved at all. And this is a pretty standard set of tournament rules. If you do online tournaments ever, like Doug and I are big into the online tournaments. I know Kyle's done a few, and this is a pretty standard rule set. So if you've done like the online Swimbait tournaments, pretty normal there. But we just trying to limit the amount of complaints people can have. Try to keep it.
Is everybody fishing from shore, or some people in boats in this tournament?
I mean, we didn't really allow boats the past couple of years, and to be honest with you, the actual benefit of being in a boat is pretty. But we say no boats because it just complicates things, and we just we're gonna do no boats again but I don't know, that might change in the future, but keeping it from shore or in waders is most likely going to be the way it goes, just for safety reasons. We don't that river is really difficult to navigate in a boat if you know it well. And if you don't know it well, we just don't want to introduce the possibility of some sort of disaster from somebody coming from who's never fished that river before, putting their boat in there and just getting destroyed. So
don't put your boat.
So as far as if people want to register, you have to register ahead. You show up.
We'll register morning of. So everybody that shows up is going to get a wristband basically, and then you're going to have a wristband for registration, and then you're also going to get a trash bag to keep your trash in. So everybody's expected to keep that wristband on and to keep that trash bag on and collect as much trash as possible. The wristband and the trash bag are also to have a since Dave and I we fish it every year, right? Because we want to, because it's fun, but also to kind of keep a constant referee on one another, right? If you have your trash bag hanging off you and you have this obnoxious yellow wristband on, just making sure people, if there's somebody watching you all the time, behave, do the right thing. You know what I mean?
That's in a boat tournament, have a little green ribbon from your bow hook. You can kind of tell who's in the tournament, who's not.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Similar idea.
So it's no entry fee. You show up the morning of. You bring a couple swim baits and a rod. Right, and there's kind of a meeting in the morning. You fish. You submit. You just bring in your videos at the end of the day, or do you submit them?
Yep. Basically, so Dave and I stopped fishing a little bit early, and we'll be at the kind of the meeting spot, and then we'll basically just hang out and watch everybody's videos and make sure that everybody was, all the requirements were followed. And this year, and so basically, we're gonna watch everybody's videos and announce winners then and there, pretty much. And it, like I said, like you said,
and while that's going on, I think somebody's grilling hot dogs or burgers,
yep,
or right,
so we have
and then you sit there and chat, and there'll be potentially some vendors and people Swimbait showing stuff, right? So there'd be plenty to do and talk and do all that stuff while you're kind of going through the videos.
Yep, absolutely. A bunch of guys bringing food. We have like 3 guys bringing food this year, and there will be a few people selling baits, and there's going to be one guy selling rods, I believe. So a good place just to like interact with like-minded people and buy some cool stuff. And
so even if you can't make it all day, you could probably show up at 3 o'clock and like see the ceremony and talk to the people selling baits and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, if you've never been around like the swim bait culture before, it's definitely a very unique thing. Like going to the gathering or going to like a toxic day. And, Kyle and Doug have done a bunch of these shows. It's just a unique space. Like you don't get. If you're one guy throwing a swim bait on a lake in Minnesota, like the odds of another guy throwing a swim bait there, at least 5 years ago, were 0. But nowadays, it's maybe there's one other guy kind of thing, and so there's to have everybody together in the same space is just kind of a fun thing, no matter where it is.
Yeah, so it's February 15th. It's Monticello, Minnesota. I think there's a map and some things out here. I pasted a link to the site. I think it's in the description of the video as well. If you're watching the replay, there's a map. So otherwise, I think there's a way to reach out, get on the email list.
Yeah, any
other things. If you've never been there before, you probably want at least knee to hip boots or waders, just so you can kind of get in the water a little bit in places. I don't necessarily need full-blown chest. I mean, chest waders are nice, not going to lie. Like it'll make you a little more mobile and give you a little more room, but you probably at least want some knee-high, water-high boots for this tournament. Obviously, air temps you'll see as you get closer. It is near a power plant discharge, so the water usually hovers, I want to say, around high 30s, low 40s. Is that fair?
I mean, it depends on how upriver you are, but it can be in the 50s or even a little bit higher sometimes. It depends, but yeah, it's warm enough. I mean, there's ice on like the sides of the river, but it can get well into the 40s or even to 50s sometimes.
And it can kind of depend on where you are in a current seam. Like, like it varies wildly depending on what the current's doing and where you are. Like 5+ degrees for sure.
Yeah.
And like on the it's interesting because like that part of the river, where most people will be walking and where you're meeting is where the current naturally flows and brings the warm water. Mm-hmm. And the opposite side of the river there is typically 10 degrees colder, and the ice usually comes across on the other side. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So I think you guys have prizes for the top 5 for sure, or what is the process? Like, you got all these baits and there's people catching fish. There's probably some combination of win and giveaways and all kinds of things. Like, what is that process going to look like?
Yeah, so we do the top 5, and then this year, what we're gonna do is the top 5, and then we're also gonna have like a women's runner-up and kids under 16 runner-up. So it'll be the top 5 regardless, obviously, and then the woman who weighs in the highest fish, and then the heaviest fish, and then the kid under 16 who weighs in the heaviest fish as well. But so the top 5 person is gonna get the first prize. Is going to be the Leviathan and then 3 baits they're choosing. The second place is 2 baits they're choosing. Third place is a beta they're choosing. And then 4th and 5th place are also a beta they're choosing. And then additionally, after that, we'll do giveaways. So basically anybody who weighed in a fish is going to get a raffle ticket, and then the baits are given away. And then once we're done with everybody who weighed in a fish, then it'll be the anybody who participated in the tournament. So anybody who registered and got a wristband, we'll start giving away the baits after that. So
how many people did you guys have the last couple of years?
I think the first year was like 60 something, and then the second year was like high 50s kind of thing. But like a vast majority, I think literally everybody leaves with baits. I don't think there was anybody who left without getting something. And that varies. Like some people got like a hand-carved Japanese MBD that was going for like a ton of money last year. And then Some people got, a pack of Savage Gear baits or whatever, but it varies. But everybody leaves with something pretty much.
Cool. I don't know. Is there any questions I didn't answer or we didn't cover on the tournament? Yeah, no entry fee.
Nope.
Show up. What I guess, I was somebody asked about results. What kind of fish has been winning this tournament?
Yeah, so the first year, 412 won it, and then second place was a 411, and then I think like third, fourth, and fifth were all like mid to low fours, like 4-5 kind of thing. And then the second year, I think a 4-4 or a 4-5 won it, and then by like fourth place we were getting into the high threes. So the first year was obviously pretty good. Like, every fish in the top 5 is over 4 with an almost 5-pounder, 2 almost 5-pounders. And then last year, like a mid-low 4 even won it with, you were top 3 with a high 3. So, it varies on the year, and I'm sure there's going to be some years where there's going to be a couple of 5s put in, and then there's going to be some years where a high 3 takes it all. So it really just, depends. It's fishing.
And what kind of water temps have you been blessed with the last 2 years?
I mean,
air temp. Sorry.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think we took water temps. I don't. If somebody did, I don't remember what they were. But I mean, I've taken water temps a few times, and I've seen 50s, pretty far upriver, and I've seen high 30s pretty far downriver, and it really depends. And there's some years, like I was just there last week, and the banks are completely frozen. You're dodging icebergs, so it varies dramatically.
Yeah, but air temps. Sorry, is what I meant to say.
Air temps. Sorry, my bad. My bad. Yeah. So the first year it was like, I think 9 a.m. it was like low 30s, and we got into 40, I think, by the end of the day. I mean, I was wearing a sweatshirt at the end of the day. We did the whole thing outside the first year, so we didn't. The city of Monticello didn't know about us, obviously, and we didn't like reach out to them or anything. So we were all outside the whole time, and everybody was comfortable. I mean, end of the day, everybody was in sweatshirts, drinking beers, hanging out, kind of thing. And then the second year was a little bit colder, but relatively similar. We got lucky the first 2 years for sure, and February in Minnesota could be. I mean, it could be 50 and it could be 10. So we'll see. I'm hoping it's good weather, but I'm not expecting it.
Yeah. So you guys have a space for the weigh-in or the gathering now?
Yep. In the morning, we'll meet at a part of the Monticello Community Center, and we'll do everything there. That'll be pretty nice. And at the end of the day, same thing. We have that same space at the Monticello Community Center. It's a pretty decent space, enough to house a few guys selling baits and to hang out with everybody. So it should be a lot. And there's people can fish for a little while, escape to their cars, warm up. Worst case scenario, go back out and fish for a little while. And in the morning and in the evening, at least we'll be comfortable for sure. So
nice. So that makes it nice. Maybe can't fish and they just want to come for the 3 o'clock and see some of the exhibitors and the baits and talk to people and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's smallmouth only. There's really only this river is like 99 point. It's the upper Mississippi. This section of the river is pretty much 99.7% smallmouth anyways. There are no spots. There are like 4 largemouth and they're not very big. At least they're not in that section of the river that time of year. Or they fell to a minnow when they were 8.
Yeah, I would be if somebody catches like a largemouth that would get into the top 5, I'll give you a bait for my personal stash.
You'll get a bait.
There's no way.
Alec will make sure you get a bait.
Yeah, for sure. If you catch a largemouth that would get in the top 5, I'll make it happen for you. I promise.
Is there a threshold where it will be too cold where you won't have the tournament or change it?
I mean, yeah. If it's truly intolerable, we would definitely move it.
Like Monday this week.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, like if it's the way that it was last week, where it's like -12 and the wind is hitting 20, 30 sustained, there's just no way we can do that. Like, I'm pretty sure that's illegal. I don't know, but
a really bad recipe for throwing expensive baits when you're line freezing too.
Yeah, and I think it's just one of those things. It's just going to be a game time decision. Like I said, we've got lucky the past couple of years, but if it's truly unbearable or irresponsible, then we'll move it. But to be honest with you, I've fished that river uncomfortably, but I've fished it in 15, and it's doable. So, I think that it'd have to be pretty cold, or really windy or something like that.
Sometimes they bite better when it's cold, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because it just takes all the live baiters out of it. Like if it's 20 degrees, the live baiters all hide at home. So it's much easier, much less pressure when the weather's a little bit crappy. So I think there's a benefit of that to where if it is a little bit worse, we might have the river to ourselves or close. So.
All right. I guess while we're talking tournaments, I think we covered everything. But
yeah, and if anybody does have any questions, I think that reaching out to either Dave or me on Instagram and if you have like a question about a bait, like, hey, is this okay? Reaching out to Dave and I on Instagram is probably the best way to just get your question answered real quick. So
I guess one question. Did anybody talk about what the winning baits were the last couple of years, or what type of baits won?
Yeah, the first year the bait that won was a Piz Drift. It's like a 7-inch glide bait, and then
who is that?
I think the other 4 were all soft baits. I think it was mostly dominated by like a mag draft, and I think one guy was caught one on a mag slow as well. But 6 or 7-inch soft baits, and then 1 glide bait. And then last year was a pretty similar story. A couple glide baits, but mostly like 6-7-inch softies.
Dave said last year.
Sorry, what did you say, Kyle?
Dave said Clash won it last year.
Oh, TK? Yeah. Yeah, first place was TK. He caught like 3 over 4. So
sweet.
And then outside that, but it was a lot of softies.
And Kyle and Doug, are you guys going?
Yep,
Doug,
I'll be there.
Doug will be there?
Oh, I'm having a kid sometime around that time, so TBD.
It's completely irresponsible.
I know.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll fish. We'll also have some baits available for people to check out. So we contribute as well. So
we're smoking chicken.
I'm bringing some smoked chicken too, some sliders. And I think for any of the guys coming out of town, I mean, a little bit of I get gas, this, that, and whatever. But being a free event, and last year, I mean, what Andy and Braden Webb won from? I think they won, didn't they win? They came up from Missouri. And so you're going out there, you're throwing swim baits, so catch a fish, get some prizes.
So then you guys got, I think you guys also involved in the throwback tournament. You guys want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I run that one. Tournament page is up on our website, on the Throwback website. So that, again, coming from fishing conventional tournaments all around, I still have that competitive side. Wanted to do something with swim baits and so a little bit of a hybrid tournament. I mean, traditionally, you're conventional, you're looking for a 5-fish limit. You get into swim baits or even some of the big bass style tournaments, and a lot of times it's a single fish, right? You big bass bash, things like that. Kind of want something in between. So we have a full 8-hour tournament, throwing big baits, and it's a 3-fish limit. Team event, there is an entry fee, but we've got some good payouts, and $250 entry fee, 25 boat limit. It'll be our 3rd year. We have some kick-ass trophies and shirts and all that stuff, and a lot of the same contributors that they have for the winter event. We're giving out baits. I mean, you pay the $250 and you're almost walking away with, your money back in swim baits or gear or merch or whatever without winning a prize. So this year, June 14th, Lake Waconia Regional Park, tournament hours 7 to 3. Again, for anybody towing a boat or coming from out of town, I mean, in the past couple of years, we've had guys come up from Texas. Last year, a couple won it from New York. They towed their boat out here to do some fishing, hopped in our tournament, and they won on Corona. So, I mean, it kind of levels the playing field. Obviously, knowing a lake helps, but everyone's out there throwing big baits, you know? So I think it definitely levels the field in that sense. And it's in June. You know, your fish are up shallow. You know,
guaranteed not to be frozen in June in Minnesota. We can guarantee that.
Not guaranteed
That's
to be nice.
99.9% guaranteed.
We had some nasty weather. It wasn't frozen last year, but we had some nasty weather up on Corona. So a lot of tin boats out there in a lightning storm. But yeah, it's a good time. I mean, and for the big tournament guys, I mean, yeah, it's a $250 entry fee. You know, pretty reasonable for some of the big events around here. I wouldn't even call it a big event, but it's a fun event. It's really laid back. It's low key. I mean, yeah, we have the rules in place, and I mean, we do the weigh-in and everything proper, but it's a community event, right? I mean, we have tons of contributors, tons of baits. It's a really good time. We'll have a party, so to speak, at the Throwback shop the night before. You know, we'll get people into the shop. We'll have a bunch of food and just hang out. And it's really about the community. So it is a 15-inch limit on those 3 fish. I mean, I hate to be throwing 12-inch baits and showcasing Minnesota's 12-inchers, you know. So, you know, really, again, with that 3 fish limit, the goal is to really throw the big baits and grind for those bigger fish. So. Tackle and equipment's very similar to the winter event. 5-inch hard baits, 6-inch soft baits, and there's quite a bit of language around, you know, some of the soft baits, again, Kitex and things like that. But otherwise, you're pretty typical tournament rules for any of the local guys. So.
And that's team or solo. You can do it whichever way you want.
Yep. And we've had quite a few local hammers fish it in the past. I think, what was it? Noah Schultz won the first year. Had Arnie Helgerson fishing it. A couple of the, you know, local tournament guys. So
I'm making notes to see if it fits in my schedule. I feel like it'd be a good time for some content, like chucking big baits all day. And
yeah, when
if
we
I
fished,
suck, I have an excuse that I was throwing a swim bait and I don't know what I'm doing. So
is that going to Alec? Maybe you know better, but is that going to coincide with the Metro Muskie tournament? It's the second weekend in June.
It's every year. You guys every year you put this on. It coincides with the Metro Muskie tournament. It's so, there's like
you gotta choose. Alec.
I just cannot do because I have I've been.
You can do it. You can fish on Waconia with big baits and double dip, right?
That. I did not think about that. Waconia makes both an option.
There'll probably be some people in the Metro Muskie tournament at Waconia as well, so you won't.
Oh wow! I didn't think about that. That's kind
absolutely.
No excuse.
Are you guys gonna allow double dipping? Is that okay?
I'm gonna promote the double dip, and we're gonna strongly encourage the use of leaders. And
all right.
You know,
well, I mean, I'll talk to the boys, but that sounds like something we might do. Jesus Christ! I didn't realize. Wow.
That'd be pretty sick. Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's a good deal. And any questions, certainly reach out. Registration's open on the site. We'll cap it at 25 boats. Last year we got close. I didn't get a fish last year. My boat blew up. So, but we were just about 20 boats last year. So I think we'll fill it. We've got a lot of traction, a lot of great giveaways. I think we'll fill it up this year. So I think, you know, the Federation TOC's the following weekend. So, right, I think that's the following Sunday, Monday on Waconia. So maybe a good opportunity to do some pre-fishing, sign up for our tournament, sling some big baits, and see what you see, you know. So, but
cool.
It'll be a good time.
Patrick wants to know, is the a G2 shellcracker? I feel like that would be not 6 inches.
Yeah, definitely not. Unfortunately,
like a 4.5-inch bait, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a black dog bait. I think it's probably like in the 4.5, 5 range. I don't think it's going to count, unfortunately.
I feel like I had one of those. Must be somewhere else.
Yeah, great bait and pretty ubiquitous swim bait, but not big enough, unfortunately.
is there like a ruler that you have at registration where you have to people can like like at the end of the tournament where you can bump your fish? Do you guys have a ruler where you can bump your swim baits in the morning?
Sure, we could. Yeah, we'll bring one of those. We'll bring a bump. I can make that happen.
It's really close.
Oh, that's is that one of the TK gills? It is.
Yeah, tackle craft. Yeah.
I actually put some language in our rules because some of them baits, like a 6-inch bass tricks is 5 1/4, and things like that. So yeah, you got to be careful with some of them. But
all right, I think so. Here's I think a pretty much legitimate question. I think Patrick even commented earlier that he's watched many of these swim bait streams. He's watched videos on swim baits. In his head, he thinks he has learned things about how to catch, but has not had a lot of success. What is some basic success or basic advice you guys would give, and maybe just take turns of how to get into it, how to catch your first swim bait bass, that kind of stuff?
time on the water. I mean, you can't replace that. But if you have a conventional background, you got to apply a lot of the same techniques. I mean, when the fish are shallow, when the fish are deep. If you'd be dragging a football jig, go out there and throw a big hud. In the same spots you'd be dragging a football jig. Early mornings, throw your wake baits up shallow, things like that. But I think you gotta bridge that gap from conventional to swim baits. And don't get me wrong, there are some very big differences and I guess fish activity that would maybe alter that thought process. But for the most part, if you're just trying to catch some fish, that's what you should be doing. What do you boys think? Kyle's like, go shallow all the time. Stay shallow.
Yeah, you can't catch them shallow. They're not there. No, you definitely got to commit to it. You just have to commit to it. Every single bait deserves a day of your time to learn it because every single bait is different. Like every glide bait is different. You could have 10 6-inch glides and they all are going to have different bite patterns to them. So I would just, exactly glue the swim bait to your hands, give it a day, give it 5 hours. And then as soon as you get bit on that bait, just absorb all the knowledge of what you did, where you were, the technique you were, the perfect bait that comes to mind is our crawler. People have quite the love-hate relationship with our crawler. They either just struggle, like Billy, he hates it, and I love it. But there is a certain cadence with that bait that you figure out, and you can't teach it. You just have to understand what the pace and the cadence of that bait is. And once you get it down, I mean, it's just it unlocks this bite that you don't know is possible. It's not something you can teach. It's not something you can learn. You just have to experience it. So just put time into a bait and give it proper amounts of time. Get a bite on it, get a couple bites on it, and then understand if you like it or not, if it's going to fit in your arsenal or not. The Metroglide is a perfect example too. It's that's a bait. That bait now to me is like a Senko was back in the day. If I can't catch a bait, if I can't catch a fish on the Metroglide, there's no fish in the lake. That's how I feel right now, because I have so much confidence in, I know I've just caught enough fish on it to where I'm like, yeah, the way I'm fishing it in these areas, there should be bites. So time.
So just like Kyle and Doug have said, I think just time is the biggest thing. You're going to have days where you go out, and even in Minnesota, you're going to have days where you go out and skunk on swim baits. And then you're going to have days that will be legitimately life-changing on swim baits in Minnesota. I mean, seriously, time's the biggest factor there. I mean, Patrick, if you, are you a Minnesota boy? Cause that changes things a little bit, but if you are a Minnesota guy, I've noticed my best swim bait bass success is on bodies of water that don't have muskies in them, that don't have a ridiculous pike population. Because, you have to think, if you're throwing swim baits on a body of water that has, Eastern Pennsylvania, that changes things. But
probably
anyway,
similar.
Yeah, I guess. But if you're throwing a swim bait for bass on a lake that has a muskie or pike population that's fished pretty heavily, I mean, you're throwing swim baits for fish that have seen thousands of bucktails and thousands of bulldogs and thousands of giant baits their entire lives, and they're very used to that presence. Where if you go to a lake in Minnesota and you throw a gill glide bait in the spring on legitimately any lake without muskie or pike, you're gonna catch one. I mean, it's just a matter of it's just how it is. And I think also bait selection too. I think diversifying your bait selection, you don't need to have a lot of baits to start out, but some key baits to have, or like a wake bait is huge, just to have for low light, or like cloudy days, fishing the right kinds of cover with a wake bait can be a big deal. Like, Kyle's crawler, I've obliterated them on that thing. It's such a good bait, having the right wake or a crawler. You have to have a nice glide. I would, one of the Throwback Metros is such a fun little glide, and yeah, it's 7 inches, but it's realistically a little glide, or like a bigger glide, like a 250 or something that's going to have a much more fluid action. I wouldn't recommend starting with a giant glide like that, but it's something to have. And then a couple of soft baits kind of thing. Really, if you have a topwater, a couple glides, maybe a deep crank, and a couple of softies, you're going to be in good shape. And really just spending time with those baits. I know from, anecdotally from friends that Pennsylvania is not the easiest place to fish. So I think also just, there are certain bodies of water, and I know Kyle and Doug, you've definitely experienced this as well, but there are very, very swim bait friendly bodies of water. And there are bodies of water where they will not touch big stuff. I mean, it varies dramatically. I mean, just what those fish are eating and what they're most comfortable eating varies too. So I think that finding bodies of water that are more swim bait friendly. I mean, you could have a body of water that you've really struggled on conventionally, and then you throw a big softy or a nice glide there and start changing things dramatically. So, or just unlock a new caliber of fish. I mean, I have plenty of stories like that. So it's just time. And then, bait selection and choosing the right body of water.
Yeah, that was a good nugget about the big pike, big muskie, and then it made me think that why did Doug put it on Waconia for his tournament then? Because those fish are just going to be calloused and hard to catch, is what I just heard. But anyways, but so I'll give my opinion as somebody that's definitely doesn't have, a zillion swim bait catches, but somebody that is like worked to that threshold. Couple things, like to me, like to most people that fish tournaments, or just conventional, what do we call it? This feels big initially, right? But once you catch a few fish on this and you watch some 13 inchers absolutely choke this, it really starts to shift your mind. You know what I mean? Like this bait goes from, it doesn't take much fishing a bait like this and catching some pound to 2 pounders on it to make this feel like a spinner bait or a chatter bait really quick. So for me, mentally, that was a mind shift. Like when you're on a good chatterbait or spinnerbait bite, like, and they're wadded up, like you're on a flat where you're catching a bass every like 3 to 5 casts, that's a great time to pick up a swim bait and build some confidence. Or like if you're in a neck down area where there's like some current pushing in, or like an inflow where the fish are just wadded in there, that's a great time to like pick up something you've never caught a fish on and catch some fish on a glide that's a little bigger than you're used to. So that's been some of the things that I have done. So I mean, that's how I caught my first trick shad bass. In the fall, I was like, it seemed like there was a pretty good jig dock bite happening, and I let the guy in the back of the boat keep throwing a jig, and I picked up this thing, and I had a blast that afternoon. Twitching this thing around boat docks in the fall, in water that was super clear. Like you could have swore you would have saw those 4-pounders sitting under there, but then they would just come out of nowhere and crush that thing. So that's some of my advice. Grow into it, but into the same, like I hear this all the time, like the bigger baits draw and will show you things, but it's hard to put your head around it. And I think most of us know it's hard to catch something you don't have confidence in. So building that confidence is key.
I would say if you have someone that you fish with often who is into swim baits, go out and fish with them. Like I can't tell you how many times I've heard stories of people like, I was with my buddy and I saw him fishing this bait and now I need one. Like, seeing is believing. So there's definitely an aspect of, if you're not ready to jump in, just to learn and try, and the price to entry is high. If you know someone who's already into it, just spend a day with them, and it could be enough to convince you to give it a shot.
Just know that big bite guys are a little weird, so just be prepared. Like that, they're all a little off a little bit. Like,
yeah, like sadistic and kind of No, it's bad.
All right, I think this is great, Ben. Main question is, what conditions make you reach for what bait?
I'd say the parallels between this and conventional are so similar. You know, like an overcast day, get the wake bait out. Clear water, like, I mean, Doug, you take it away. You know this a little better than me, but I would just say conventionally, like, it just translates.
If I'm would be ripping a chatterbait through the weeds, then I'm gonna swim a weedless soft bait through the weeds. If I'm dragging bottom with a jig, I'm dragging a jig hook soft bait. If I'm fishing the middle of the water column, I'm throwing a glide. Jerk bait bite, I go to the DRT TK. You know, if I'm fishing a frog around the pads, I'm throwing a wake bait along the pads. So, it just really parallels with the conventional bite and what the fish are doing. And
if it's nighttime, you're up shallow with a wake bait. You don't leave the shore, and you don't put the wake bait down, right, Doug?
Or the soft bait, yeah.
Yeah, Doug,
I guess I've heard this too, that like if you don't at least have a ripple, you probably shouldn't throw a glide bait.
Yeah, I completely agree with Doug. And then my only other thing to add to it really is that if you're pretty much anytime, if you're doing literally anything or fishing for anything, you can have a glide bait on and it'll get smoked. So a glide bait's always
it's the Senko of the swim bait world.
I have a problem, but I love glides, and they're always
6 or 7 inch glide bait is the Senko of the swim bait world. I'm
so good.
If you can't get bit on that, then they're just not biting. That's it.
I think there was a related question. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the Mississippi with a glide bait in Minnesota, like the upper Mississippi, that is like it's like a guarantee. It's like the patterns that exist on lakes throughout the year where you have up and downs. It's like it doesn't exist on the Mississippi. I feel like you can go out and catch smallmouth on a 6 or 7 inch glide any day, any condition, no matter what.
When you say, like, are you talking like Monticello up in the summertime, like that?
Like the St. Cloud, all the way up to Grand Rapids. It's just like, it's unbelievable.
So, is there a situation you would not throw a big bait?
For me, I'm too stubborn. So, honestly, I love fishing with my buddies that will throw conventional. In my mind, I could go out and I fish Mille Lacs a ton. I chase a lot of smallmouth. I'm not foolish. I know that a Ned rig or a hair jig certain times of the year is going to outfish the big bait. I love fishing with conventional buddies and letting them throw that, and I'll throw the big stuff. At the end of the day, more often than not, they might catch the numbers, but I'm going to get that big one, So and that's the trade-off I'm willing to put out there. I'm looking for that bigger bite. So no, I'm stubborn. I'm always throwing the big stuff.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go, dude.
I was going to say the one day I spent on Mille Lacs with Doug this year, biggest fish came on a blade bait. It's all right. It's all right. All right, take it away, Alec.
Well, I'd say I'm 99% Swimbaits at this point. It's taken me a while to get there, but like I'd say I throw Swimbaits the vast majority of the time, and it's really the only situation that I found myself in where I will switch to conventional is if I'm on a new body of water and I'm fishing it for an extended period of time and I don't have electronics or anything that can give me feedback. Then in these, incredibly rare situations, I'll throw conventional to kind of get information, right? If I don't have electronics, I'm on a body of water that I don't know anything about, or that it's really tough fishing, and it has to be tough fishing for me to resort to this. But getting information with conventional can be valuable. But even then, I've seen swimbaits just blatantly outperform conventional size wise so many times that it's just not worth it for me anymore. And I'm at the point where if I catch, if I go out for 10, 12 hours, 14 hours in a day and I catch one fish, but it's a big one, that's it for me. Like that's fine. I don't really care. I'm not fishing for numbers. I haven't since I was a kid. Like it's just not what I'm interested in anymore. And if you're the kind of guy that needs numbers, like if you need that constant stimulation like that, that's totally fine. I mean, and there are some days where you can get that on swim baits, but just know that signing up for swim baits, like some days it is a straight skunk, and there's some weeks where it's a skunk until you get the big one. But one of my buddies, this is a story I tell the people who are kind of getting into it all the time, is one of my buddies invited me to his cabin a few years back, and I was throwing the entire we were there for one day. The entire day I threw a Gangcraft 230. I don't know what made me pick it up, to be honest with you. I don't really remember, but it's a 9-inch glide bait. And he was exclusively conventional at this point. This was like the second or third time we'd ever been fishing together. And I threw a Gangcraft 230 the whole time. He threw his entire tackle box. He caught one pike all day, and I caught, it was like 30-something pike, with 7 of them being over 30 inches, and then 4 of them were over 36, and the biggest was like almost 38. One day, all in the Gangcraft 230. The thing just looked like hell afterwards, but it was one of those days where obviously those fish, for whatever reason, were on big baits. Like there are bites, right, that you're unlocking with swim baits, where there are sometimes of year, some bodies of water where for whatever reason, the fish just don't care about small stuff right then and there. Like what they're eating is a 9-inch Cisco, or it is a 6-inch gill, or it is something that you cannot do with conventional. And I think it's a rare instance, but it absolutely happens, and you can have some absolutely stupid days when nobody else would, because you threw a 9-inch glide. But yeah, like literally the 1 to 30 pike conventional versus, and he threw everything. He threw jerk baits, he threw crankbaits, he threw soft plastic. I mean, legitimately his blade baits. He threw his entire spoons, he threw his entire tackle box, and I threw one bait the whole day, and it just got smoked constantly. Like he looked sick by the end of it. And that's when he started throwing swim baits exclusively. It was that day. Actually, he hasn't looked back, man. He's on Universe in the Works now. He almost exclusively throws swim baits now because of that day.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it a few times where there's been windows. Probably one of the first times was this. Like I think the bite got better in the fall. Like I was catching fish on a jigs, but I think I actually caught more and bigger fish when I switched to this in a fall shallow bite. Then there was a time on Washington, out west of the cities, and both of the other examples are spring, where like I was catching fish on like Senkos and tubes up shallow, and this is not a big bait, but when I switched to this thing, like I went right back through where I just fished and caught a few fish and lit them up. Like that bait just produced. And then there was another place where we were catching them pretty good on spinner baits and swim jigs and chatter baits, and the bite kind of dulled, and it was me and Sobe and Bart, and we were actually all doing like some photo shoot stuff, and like we were both raptored down right next to each other, throwing in this, like there was like an inflow there. Like I mean they were wadded in there, but the bite kind of slowed, and I picked up I got a couple on this glide, and it didn't really stay going. But then I picked up a Megalodon, which is like a little bit bigger than a mag draft, like the Spro, and I bet you I caught 10 in a row, throwing right next to Sobe, throwing a swim jig and a chatterbait and whatever. Like he was even throwing a freaking wacky rig in there, and I was just, and they were like, 2 3/4 to 4 pounders, like, and I then would like give him the swim bait, and I'd pick up the chatterbait, and I wasn't getting bit. I picked the swim bait back up and like started catching them again. Like, so there is like scenarios where it is like the deal. There was one question here that I wanted to tackle here. JJ, you got any recommendations for wing dams on the Mississippi River? Preferably comes over rock, minimal snags, and maintains balance and current. And I think your fishing in Monticello would apply, because it's basically a giant wing dam down there. Like it's shallow rocks everywhere where we're fishing in there. So what are some of your tips for river current rocks, and I suppose like your upper Mississippi stuff? Like what do you guys like, and what are some of the tips maybe?
I like die hard the Metro Glide. It's just our 7-inch 2-ounce glide, but the way we tune them, they're almost low floats, which is perfect for this, especially for this question. You know, they float just barely on the surface, but when you swim them, they come down about a foot. So it allows you to have complete control of like really shallow stuff. So for example, we floated like the Sauk River up by like St. Cloud last year, and it's so skinny there and so shallow. We like floated on the paddle boards. It never gets deeper than 4 feet. So like you're fishing these tiny little holes, and it's trees and laydowns, but you have this low float. So you cast it in, and you just have the ability to keep it, you know, right on the surface. So that would be my go-to for anything related to shallow water, rocky scenarios, is a low float, choppy glide.
So I mean, like a trick shad, an Eon glide,
Eon glide,
like some of those baits are pretty similar,
Trick
right?
shad,
Like, I mean,
yep. Yeah, that whole realm. Anything 6
check
to
out the throwback. But I mean, if you have other baits, you know,
yeah,
I mean, maybe even like the Chad Shad, does that
if
fit
you're
in that?
at a budget? Yep. Chad Shad, Spro Chad
Like
Shad.
a resin Shad would, or the resin trick shads, right? Those would be like budget versions of that would be in the same type of baits.
Yeah. Yeah, the ABS Chad Shad and the ABS Bull Shad would both be great. They're like what, $30, $40, $50. Yeah, those would be exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think any glide like that, like, you know, Metro's perfect. Same thing. Yep, like a ABS Shad like that. Really, any you know 6-7-inch glide is just a power bait to get into swim baits, to fish anywhere. I mean, you know, when you get good with glides, you can steer those suckers pretty well too. So that's good. Like a top hook Softy is another good one to fish in that kind of scenario. And you can, you know, like you can rig or like a weedless Softy is another good one. You can get through rocks pretty easily. Or there's, you know, they make the like bullshed is a 4x4. Bullshed 4x4 would be a great bait for that too, because you can rip over anything with those things. I mean, they call it a 4x4 because that's functionally what it is. I mean, Mike has
a Buka 4x4, right? Yep. Just for the people that don't know.
Yeah, you get that thing in like a craw pattern on a river like that, and that's an awesome bait to kind of bulldoze through there too. But I think a glide is, you know, I'm biased, but always the answer. Top hook Softies in that scenario, or a Buka 4x4. I'd be, you know, in a shallow rocky river like that. What I would go to.
And that's the 4x4 is a crank down.
Yep, 4x4 crank down. So the other one will be a bullshed wake. The lips are different. Action's way different. I mean, I guess the wake would be fine too. But another thing you could do is like a smaller swimmer, like any Buka swimmer, floater swimmer, like a flea shad from Throwback. Those are also, you know, great. You know, suspending swimmer or a floating swimmer that's more towards like the summer months where that does really well for me. But those are also a great thing for like a shallow rocky river like that.
Looks like you can get Leviathan rods at Omnia Fishing. Look at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Leviathan's in a few different places. It's pretty cool. Waypoint had them or has them. I don't know, but there's a couple different places that has them.
Just snooping around.
Yeah, we talked about Dobbins earlier, and it's a great budget-friendly rod. I think if you really get into swim baits, spending a few $100s on a rod when you're spending a few $100s on the bait itself isn't a whole lot. I use all Leviathans. I have, you know, every rod in their swim bait lineup. I love the medium heavy. I mean, you're going to be your comparable to the ratings of that Dobbins 795. Yeah, I mean, great rods all around. And there's a lot of swim bait specific rods out there. I can't speak to all of them. I've pretty much used the Dobbins Fury Champion series and then now Leviathan, but there's a lot of great rod builders out there.
Yeah, for the people that came in late, we do have a couple baits to give away here in a little bit. I don't know how you guys doing for time. Still feeling it.
Yeah,
somebody's got to head out. Kyle, you got to head out. Sounds like.
Yeah, I do get that out in a little bit. I got to get up really early and take my son to hockey, so I can't stay up too late.
That's understood. Well, you got Doug representing you, right? So
yeah, Doug can hold Doug's the late night owl.
Well, I guess, yeah, might as well just seem like a good spot. Appreciate you coming in, Kyle.
Yeah.
We can let you go. Natural
Thank you,
exit.
fellas.
Appreciate your time. Nice
Yeah.
meeting you.
Appreciate you.
Maybe I'll see you around.
Yeah.
Won't be at the. I'll be on my way to Mexico, so I will not be freezing my bass off. But maybe some other time.
Well, enjoy it. How do we get out of this thing gracefully? You just boot me out.
There you go.
Yeah.
See ya.
All right. All right. Carter says met Doug yesterday.
Heck yeah, stopped in for a bait.
Dustin just got out of work.
Oh,
Hope that was work.
I'm glad that was. I'm glad.
Yeah, he actually worked at a prison.
Good.
So yeah.
Very happy.
So people actually like. Is there a shop store where people can actually come to this shop and buy some baits, or is it mostly
Yeah,
online?
so
or
we're
is it
pretty
not
much we're right
encouraged or
in
not
Maple
encouraged,
Grove,
or-
Deerwood Lane, right across from Omni Brewing. You know, and we have a little storefront right in the front of the shop, so to speak. So a little ring doorbell, hit the doorbell, like I said, 9 to 3 weekdays. Try to keep a selection of baits in the storefront itself. But yeah, come check things out. We usually have something cooking in the back too, where you know you can come get a one of one or check out what we're working on or whatever. So it's pretty cool. We love having people stop by. So
Awesome. Let's see here. Will comments that people throwing $200 baits are crazy. Can't do it.
it
That's
hurts
fair.
after the first couple you lose, but I mean, I really don't lose too many baits. You know, especially now that I feel like I know what I'm doing. You know, you really don't. You worry about getting hung up and whatnot, but if you're set up, your gear's set up, I mean, you're getting that bait out of there. Lure retrievers or whatever else. But
Yeah. I guess we didn't really talk about this, but are you guys like fans of scope and live forward facing sonar and big baits and be able to keep track of them? Or are you mostly fishing them shallow? Like,
I'm a scope guy. I enjoy it. I enjoy what I learn from it. I mean, I think whether it's funny, you know, I fished a lot of tournaments back in the day before scope was even around, and I kind of wonder sometimes now what that would be like. But again, I just don't put the big baits down. More so, I mean, yeah, are there fish that I catch with scope that I wouldn't catch without? Absolutely. Am I learning more from the interactions than I am catching? Absolutely. I mean, just seeing a fish follow that bait and how it interacts with that bait, or even just, I mean, scope itself, just learning about these fish is a whole different ball game. But yeah, I am for the live scope 100%.
Yeah, I would say that my mentality with scope is I like wish it wasn't a thing, but since it is a thing, I'm gonna use it, if that makes sense. Like I think, you know, I don't have any electronics on my boat. Keep in mind, I'm also an incredibly poor student, so it's one of those things where it's more like if I had the money to do it, I would 100%. I also think it, like, you know, instead of going out some days and I'm throwing a glide bait and having a blast, I'm sitting there at the end of the day, my neck's sore. You know what I mean? Like it ruins it for me a little bit, but I also think that this day and age, you know, it's one of those things. If you're not keeping up, you're going to get lost. And I think scope is such a giant, massive advantage that, you know, I think it makes such a big difference that you're dumb not to have it, to be honest with you. But once again, I will reiterate, I kind of wish it wasn't a thing, because I feel like it makes me, I feel like I'm not fishing for the right reasons sometimes because of it, if that makes sense. But,
yeah.
but I also think it's, you know, it's a giant advantage. You're going to catch fish, and you know, it's one of those things where it'll take your fishing to the next game. It makes a bad fisherman a good fisherman. It makes a good fisherman a great fisherman. Makes a great fisherman unstoppable. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think where I was going with that is like, I think it makes it a little easier. Now, obviously, if you're fishing shallow baits and you're waking and that stuff, it doesn't really matter as much. But like, if you want to count a more expensive glide bait down above a brush pile or a dock piling or a rock right? Or these wing dams, if they're not super shallow and you want to make sure that you got, right? Like it allows you to control your bait, especially these more expensive baits, in a way that you are stacking the odds in your favor. You are way less likely to hang it somewhere where you can't retrieve it if you can keep an eye on your bait. And honestly, they're pretty easy to see on scope when they're big chunks of material, right? Like,
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's definitely going to save you baits. And I think, I mean, you're keeping your eye on your bait the whole time. You know where snags are coming. You know when it's about to get dangerous. Like, it's definitely going to save you baits. I think also just like fishing intelligently. You know, having a leader on when you're in water like that, or fishing with the right rod, with the right reel, with the right line can make a giant difference in terms of how many baits you're losing. And I think with swim baits being as expensive as they are, I think by far the best piece of advice I can give people for that is join Swimbait Universe, join Swimbait Underground. You have no idea. Like if you think that you have to buy all these baits from Tackle Warehouse, so you have to buy them firsthand from all these companies. If you join one of those groups, like there are dudes on there, like it's different when Throwback has all their pink lemonade sewn out in 2 seconds and you just can't get a hold of it. That's a different story, right? Because if you don't get it on the drop, you're gonna spend $200 on these places, but instead of $130 or whatever. But a lot of Universe, Underground, all those places, the deals you can find, especially now, are just ridiculous. Like if you want to go, if you bought a Depths 250 right now for retail, you're spending $180. Okay, on Universe, on Underground, I almost guarantee you could find one for less than $80 right now. Like I think if you put up I'm looking for a 250, you'd have, if you wanted a brand new one, it's probably legitimately $80 to $100 max right now. And if some guy sold like 3 used ones for $150 the other day, kind of thing that I saw, right? And still it took a little while to sell. Like if you're looking for baits to lose, joining one of those groups is an awesome way to do it, because you can get baits for 30% retail or less sometimes if you're just patient. Yeah, exactly. And UFOs have seen their day. Like UFOs used to go for $300-400, but you can, a UFO for $90 when it's half of retail is super possible right now. I mean, even I still buy stuff frequently from there. In fact, I bet you of the baits that I buy, 90% of them I'm buying for like way less than retail, because you can. I mean, it's a cheat code if you want to find baits to lose, really.
It's definitely a buyer's market, and you'll see. I mean, for sure, compared to what it was a couple of years ago, where you're paying double retail, now you're paying half retail. And I mean, support the builders for sure, but if you're looking for a deal or a bargain, check out those forums. And even, I mean, locally, I think I hop on Marketplace every once in a while. I mean, there's guys that locally dabble in it and decide to sell their gear. I mean, you could go on Marketplace right now and find some Leviathans for sale or whatever else. So
Sean, these are Facebook groups, Swimbait Universe, and what was the other one? Swimbait
Underground. Yeah, just go on
Underground.
Facebook and look up Swimbait Universe, and that's pretty much it. And there's also Swimbait Underground. To be honest with you, I'm not an underground guy, but it's functionally pretty similar.
Google Underground, because they have it's more of a forum, but they have a black market where you can buy baits. Then do your due diligence, just like buying anything, right? Get reference checks, do all that. But I've bought tons of baits on there, sold tons of baits on there. I've had great luck with that. So.
Yeah, I think a 150 size reel will get you by in that 3-ounce swim baits for sure. If you start to love it, then maybe you'll want to get a 200 size reel or bigger. But if you already have a 150 size reel, it'll do it for sure. You may not want to put, you might want to fill the spool versus putting backing on it with a smaller reel. But yeah, I'm going to take one quick 1-minute break here. We'll come back. There's a bunch more questions to go through. We still got the giveaways coming. So everybody stay tuned through the 1-minute break here.
Are you ready to reel in your next home purchase or refinance? Supreme Lending's Dream Team can help guide you through the entire mortgage process, from pre-qualification to closing. We have a wide variety of home loan programs in our tackle box, including down payment assistance and first-time homebuyer options. You can ask HellaBass. He trusted us to help finance his home. Contact the Dream Team today by searching Supreme Lending Dream Team or click the link below in the description or scan the QR code on your screen.
All right, we're back. Thanks for Dream Team for supporting the show here. If you guys, supposedly rates are coming down, so if you guys need a refi or once you get that doctorate and you're looking for a house, once you get those student loans, you can look up the Dream Team. He's a tournament guy, fishing guy, out of the metro here, so he supports the show. So anybody looking, reach out. Yeah, reminder, hit the thumbs up. Doesn't cost you any, guys, to hit a thumbs up and help spread it, get more people learning, and listen to what Alec and Doug have to say. Yeah, and if I win the Swimbait throwback tournament, then I can reinvest it. So
there you go.
All right, let me let's find a couple. We'll get to the giveaways here in a little bit too. Maybe we'll try to go a little more rapid fire here. Kari Stoddard, other than searching open water, what situations are you picking up a slow wide glide or a cover glide?
Alec, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's tough because I don't, to be honest with you, I don't find myself in Minnesota for bass using a wide, open water glide all that often. I mean, whereas like where I'm at now, I'm in Arizona now, and I'm using an open water big glide like that routinely, but also I'm dealing with trout stocks and things just change with that. Or like with muskies, I'll use a big open water glide all the time. But for bass in Minnesota, I mean, it's just not something that I will do all that often. Once you switch to the ESOC side of things, pike and muskies are going to be a lot more favorable for that because the water you're fishing is a little bit different too. And that's just one of those things where, there's definitely a bite there. I'm sure there is. I just haven't experienced like a lights out, open water, big glide bait for bass. But a cover glide, like you can throw that. I mean, you can throw that thing all the time. Docks and cover glides, right? Like docks and a nice little choppy glide like the Metro. Is just, man, you in Minnesota in the spring, you can't have more fun. In the fall, same thing. I also don't, like I said, I don't have scope personally. I use it regularly, but I don't have it myself. So, a big open water glide like that, when you're deeper in the summer or in the fall, when you're dealing with schooling fish, that can change things a lot too. And then, like I said, e-stocks, I mean, a big, I'm throwing, like, I've got 2 fish on the DRT Frenzy over like 20 feet of water. And that was muskies, right? But that's as big as it gets for glides, literally. And that's a game changer when you're dealing with just like slightly deeper water and weed edges. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't fish it a ton for bass, but weed edges and e-socks, and then different populations of bass outside of Minnesota, I'm throwing it a ton. So
yeah, I think it's very similar. If I'm fishing deeper offshore type structures, then I'm throwing the big stuff, the drawing power, and so forth, down south, or even locally. I mean, locally, if I'm fishing that offshore structure, I'm throwing that big stuff. Clearer water, I'm throwing the big stuff, the big wide glides.
I think to some degree, right, Minnesota and parts where we don't have a lot of gizzard shad. So
yeah,
I think that sometimes drives some of the decisions of what some of the baits may work in certain places for sure.
100%. Yeah, gizzard.
I have no idea where the question came from or where Corey was from, but
yeah, gizzard and trout changed that answer a lot, like a lot. So
yeah. So Carter, best glide tips. What structure are you looking for open water swimbait fishing?
It depends where you're fishing, right? Down south, you've got the brush piles and stuff like that. I mean, up here it could just be a long point, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot less of the man-made structures. There's a few lakes I fish that have some trees and so forth out deeper, but really depends on where you're fishing. But I'm looking for, I'm always gravitating to main lake points, right? That's what you do. And depending on the time of year. And yeah, like I said, down south, we're looking for them trees or brush piles and things like that. I think reefs, and bait. Sometimes you don't even need that structure. You just need that bait.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd really add to that would be like weed edges, just throwing a glide off a weed edge. Like, if you have scope, if you're going out to Mille Lacs, find a nice boulder or bait balls, that kind of thing. Out here in Arizona, I'm throwing them on cliff edges legitimately and having a blast doing that. So it's any fishy structure. That's just thing. It really, the locations you're fishing swim baits don't vary that much compared to conventional. It's not the location really that matters. It's like the presentation, the bait you're trying to imitate, when you're throwing them. Like, really, the locations don't change. Like, the fish are going to be where the fish are no matter what you're going to throw at them. It's just a matter of what you're trying to imitate, what you're trying to accomplish when you're throwing at those fish. Does that make sense? Like, the fishy spots are the fishy spots. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Anything you guys do different for smallmouth? So bait recommendations?
Yeah, like I said, I target smallmouth a lot. I feel like our opportunity to catch giant smallmouth is much better than giant largemouth, so to speak. There's certain baits I really like, I guess to run through them, I love the tiny clash. To me, I work that thing like a 110, and I'm just ripping it. Deep lip V-tail. I love the Metro glide that we have, and any smaller glide in that realm. If they're on bottom, I'm dragging a 6/8 Hud, or a 7-inch hog hunter. And then one bait I've really grown to love over the last couple of years, Alec introduced me to, is the clickbait mini sonar. So in that thing, you're ripping right off the bottom. It's a reaction bite. When they're in Mille Lacs and they're down, 20 feet around those rocks and they're schooled up, you're ripping that bait up, and it's
you're like fishing at like a lipless blade bait type situation.
Yep, just bigger. So yeah.
Yeah,
so that's as far. That's what I'm throwing for baits. Kind of back to the answer to the last question. As far as where we're looking for them, same spots you're looking for them otherwise, right? They're around the boulders, they're on the points, they're on the breaks and so forth, they're around the bait. So you go where the fish are and throw the baits you have confidence in. And I've had days where I can see the fish schooling up again using the electronics, and they might not even look at a bait like that. I'll throw a big glide out there, the retro's 9 inches or even, 9.5 inches, or I'll throw something big, and those smallies will come up from 20 feet of water to 2 feet under the surface. They might not eat that bait, but you're going to see those fish. And I've seen some really big fish throwing those bigger glides. So
What was that clickbait again that you're ripping?
This is the mini sonar. So he has a full size. He has the mini version. It's a fun bait to fish. A lot of smallmouth on that.
So that's kind of something that's a good avenue to kind of explore what Doug said with the mini sonar. That's a bait that doesn't exist in conventional fishing, right? Like, a lot of times you have parallels between baits in conventional, right? And there's some baits that just like don't exist in conventional, and the mini sonar is one of them. It fish it a lot like a blade bait, but it functionally like a swimmer that will do like vertical action, right? So when you rip it, it swims upwards, but when you stop it, it falls and swims down. It's just truly like a one-of-a-kind bait. Doesn't exist anywhere else. Very cool. And there's a few baits like that in the swim baits where they just don't have a conventional counterpart. But that bait has done, the mini sonar, the clickbait mini sonar, the reg sonar, there's a bigger one coming out soon. All of those baits are just super fishy baits, especially if you have scope. Like, if you have scope and you have a sonar with you, it's game changer for sure. It's such a cool bait. But But then for me, for baits for smallies, I mean, very similar to what Doug said. Smaller glides, like 6-7 inch glides, are perfect for smallies. Things like this, a HUD, a 6 or 68 HUD, 6-inch, 7-inch mag drafts, that kind of thing. Trying to think what else. I mean, like a TK. Doug loves his TK, and it's treated him extremely well. That thing's put some hogs in the boat. Other smaller crankdowns and stuff like that. There's definitely I mean, really, it's the same stuff as largemouth, except you're downsizing slightly, right? Like for smallies, I don't get it really above 8 inches. 8 inches is kind of that threshold where they can't handle it pretty much after that. I mean, you'll see, dudes catch a smallie on a 250 every once in a while, but really to target them effectively, I wouldn't go above 8 inches, but they'll make a 6-inch bait look like nothing really easy. I've watched them choke, 6-inch HUDs to 2 feet up or 2 inches up the line kind of thing. Like they make those things look like nothing. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think the one other bait I do like to fish for smallies is some sort of line through, 5, 6, 7-inch line through. And I don't even have a brand preference. So, the top shelf or, there's various brands out there, but just a boot tail line through swimmer. You could swim through the water column, and they key in on that pretty good at times too. So,
yeah, that actually reminds me. Like, I had a tournament out of Escanaba on Little Bay, Big Bay to knock like 20 years. I mean, this is a long time ago. Like, and I had an Optimum BLT at the time, which decent little bait, but they fell apart in your tackle box over time. Like the lead would eat through the swim bait. But in practice, I had some epic bites on that, and then it like evaporated in the tournament, but I didn't adjust. But it was pretty cool for that brief moment.
It's a good search bait too. I mean, for the guys that conventional fish, I marshaled many years ago on the Elite Series they did a tournament in Green Bay, and I had some pretty good draws, but some of the guys were throwing that BLT, white one, and they're just getting the fish to come to the boat, and then they'd set it down and flip a drop shot out there, and the fish would just eat it, So really, I mean, a lot of times you can utilize these baits for these fish to show themselves, right?
Yeah.
So.
In the tournament, I just let them keep following the bait and not eating it, and didn't make an adjustment back then. So I think I'm a little smarter now, but back then I guess I wasn't very smart. So let's maybe do one of the giveaways since we got a couple. And we'll answer some questions while we're running it. So first giveaway is from DC Swimbaits. Should we show a picture of his thumb or his finger?
Yeah.
We owe it to him. Yes.
Be warned, if you are it's not that bad, but if you're like super queasy, just turn away for a second. But here's why Dave didn't show up tonight. I hope he's not still at the emergency room. Maybe the reason he's not in chat is because he's actually getting some stitches right now, but
he's probably
so he did that out in the Dakotas. So there you go. But he still wanted to send his best for Swimbaits. So Dave's been on the show before. Here's his bait. I should probably go a little bigger here so you can see the bait. But this is one of his 6-inch baits, I believe. He's going to do 1 6-inch, 1 7-inch bait. The best way to find his baits is to, I think, sign up for his email, follow him on Instagram, do the kind of drop things. He has some stuff occasionally in stock, but I think his drops go fairly quickly. There might be some available.
I don't know if he's keeping stock currently, but I know Joe's Sporting Goods carries his stuff too. And
And then Dave's
he's got a 7.5-inch boot and a 6.5 DC weedless. This is the weedless here. Rig them on 12-aught beast hooks. They're kind of designed around that hook. We've kind of talked about it. You can go back and see. I'll probably put a link down in the pinned comments after the show or in the description to kind of that old show. If you would go much more detail, but it is like a kind of a unique bait that stays upright no matter what, right? Like you can let it sit on the bottom and it stays upright. So it is a pretty unique design. So that's I just realized I was going back to talk about it, and so it no matter what, it'll like stay upright if you want to crawl it. It's great around weeds, right? Things like that. I don't know if you guys have any experience or any comments on.
Yeah, he's got some good videos too on how to turn that bait into a line through. Just various ways to rig it. He sends it with that straw to ease rigging that beast hook. But yeah, it's self-correcting, so it'll always stand up like that. And he's got a harder head. The formula he pours that head just helps with that screw lock and so forth. So a lot of thought went into that design. He did a great job.
Yeah, I've caught quite a few fish on Dave's baits. I think the fact that it sits like that is kind of it's definitely not appreciated to the extent it should be, because it'll just park in their faces, and it's buoyant enough where it'll just kind of like sit there and shimmy right in front of them. So I've watched fish come up to it, I'll kill it, and they'll just sit and stare at it. It'll just kind of be waving around and they'll smoke it, which is super fun. And then the hard head, just kind of explaining that it like with soft swim baits, a lot of times the screw locks that you'll screw into the nose of the bait, they tend to pull out a lot, and they'll kind of yeah, poor Dave. They'll kind of rupture like the nose of the swim bait. And Dave's hard plastic, it's just the head, so just where you're screwing into the bait itself is a little bit harder than the rest of the bait. So you still have the compressibility of the body of the bait. Like when that fish bites the bait, it'll still expose that beast hook just fine, but the head stays hard so that screw lock will not come out of the bait. It won't kind of blow out the nose of the bait. So for durability, that's the main purpose, is durability wise. Like there's not a more durable soft bait. It's just not going to happen. Super cool. And it's a nice thing because, on some of the soft baits on the market, you put a screw lock in there, you get one fish out of it, you set the hook and the nose rips out, and it's not a fun experience having like a $30, $40, $50 soft bait blow up on you on the first fish or two. And that Dave's baits just don't do that, which is really nice.
Yeah. So DC Swimbaits on Facebook, Instagram. Go ahead and give them a follow if you want to learn how to get in on the drops if those are of interest of you. Otherwise, you might win one. Try it tonight. So 27 people in the drawing right now. You can just put hashtag poor Dave. Yeah, I can see that. Pad stems in the spring. That would be a good place for this bait for sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what color he'll be giving away. That's this is just the one. This is my personal bait. So I'm not sure what, I don't know.
I can grab a few other colors just to show you quick too.
Yeah, if you win, I will just put I'll get your email and get you in contact with Dave as the winner. So
Mike was local, so I'm sure he can navigate getting whatever color he wants. So.
It's the bait in hand is not necessarily the.
Here's a couple other colors Dave does. This is just a nice white one with some kind of a gold finish. Then he has this. These are his coolest baits in my opinion. I think he does these really well. It's like this mirrored finish he does. Something that you don't see in a lot of softies. It's really metallic, cool looking. But Dave will also, he's very flexible. He'll do. He's got a ton of different colors.
Yeah. He's recently posted some pictures of a new trout that he's been working on that looks pretty cool. I have more baits. I just didn't start to look for them more than 7 minutes before the show, so I didn't track them down. They were scattered in my boat somewhere. So we'll give it another minute here. Well, welcome, Cam, new member. Awesome. Welcome to the Visor Gang.
I have a couple other of Dave's baits too. This you have that 6-inch. This is his 7-inch paddle tail bait. Sorry,
we had to celebrate a new member. Go ahead.
So this is 7-inch paddle tail bait, and then this is a bait
that's the debut that we were just talking about. Yep.
So that's the bigger one, and that's another color variation. And then this is his even bigger one. This is the 10-inch. I have this rigged for muskies right now, but this is the 10-inch compared to the 7-inch. That's just another color variation. He does the same thing. This is a 18-aught BKK hook, so that's a big bait.
Nice. Yeah. Good looking golden shiner imitator there for a lot of the golden shiners in our lakes up here. Awesome. Well, I think we're about ready to draw this. And then we'll answer a few more. Oh, I don't have it on the screen. Oof. Michael Bollinger. Congratulations. Literally got it in right before I drew. Congratulations, Michael Bollinger. Get a hold of me. Either send me an email at contact@richlingren.com or follow me on HellaBass on like Instagram or Facebook. Get a hold of me. Gradually get a pair of DC Swimbaits. Dave was going to do 2 sets, so we'll do another set of DC baits in a little bit. We also got a pink lemonade Metro shad coming up. So, but we'll answer a few more questions here before we just blow our wad. Let me see here. Let's see. Yeah, do you want to give any tidbits about the Metro Softy? Like, what do people need to know? Like,
it's a work in progress. I guess that's where we'll leave that. So yeah, I mean, people have seen sneak peeks of it. Working on a couple of different versions and models. Got a few out to testers, but we're really not far enough along to leak too much information. I mean, you've seen what you've seen, and that's about what we're willing to share. But hopefully by spring, looking to have a spring release, working out some details right now, but pretty excited for it. I'm
6-inch, 7-inch.
Yeah. So right now it's looking at about 7-inch. Okay. And I'm really excited about this because all the hard baits that we have, I'm a big soft bait fisherman. I love fishing soft baits, and so this dabbling in this, and hopefully just the start of many things to come. But it's as of right now, 7-inch bait built around 8/0 BKK. And it's got more of a wedge type tail, but yeah.
So is it pre-rigged, or do you rig it? People rig it themselves, or
they'll rig it themselves? Yeah.
Okay. So similar genre as this type of bait.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, okay, cool.
And what Doug's not telling you is that he's the soft bait painter. So Doug's got some pretty good soft bait colors he does himself. So that's a little secret too.
Very excited for it.
Yeah, I guess, do you guys have any like, I know some of the bait makers like test baits and that kind of stuff. Do you guys have a process, or what are you guys?
Not everyone that goes out the door. I mean, we've got a lot of our formulas and processes dialed. Pretty confident sending those out the door. Some of the bigger glides, there's a lot of, when you're pouring resin and micro balloons, I mean, there's a lot of variables that you're dealing with. I mean, humidity could have the effect on whether a bait sinks or floats and so forth. So, the bigger retros, I'm definitely testing, but the rest of the baits have a pretty good grasp on our processes. Now, does it happen where a bait won't go out the way it should, and we take care of all of that? Reach out to me if you have a problem, but it's very rare that it happens. Hey, there he is.
I don't even know how long you've been down there, Dave, but I just looked at the private chat, so hopefully you weren't sitting there too long.
I heard my name. I heard someone say my name.
We were talking about you, that's for sure.
It looks a little better than the picture I showed. So
there's a repair.
What'd they do to you, Dave?
Just 3 stitches.
Okay, not too bad. You get
That's a long wait for 3 stitches.
You get a nerve block.
What's that?
You get a nerve block. They put a needle in the base of your finger.
That was the worst part of it.
Yeah, it always is. Not fun.
Not proud of it. Me cringing.
What'd you do? Was it a hammer?
No, I was lowering a beam stand down and didn't get my hand out of the way.
Nah, you didn't break anything though. They got an X-ray and you're good.
Yep, I'm good, Dr. Alec.
Right. Cool. We just gave away 1 set of the baits, but
yep, two baits for the drawing.
All right. So Chase wants to know, what's the biggest bait you guys have caught smallies on?
I gotta say 5.5. I never broke 6 on a
No,
smallie.
well, they're asking what the biggest bait you've used to catch a smallie, not the biggest smallie you've caught.
Rum River hard gills are hard to beat at times, but that's solid. 25 fish for 5 fish type days when they get going up there. Them are
So
some
the
of my
hard gill
best
is how big?
Hard gill's like a 6-inch bait ish.
I've
6-inch hard gill.
done 25 pounds for 5 fish on the rum with hard gills. And then Monticello 4-pounders.
Yeah.
I've got,
I think we was asking,
like-
what is the biggest bait you've used to catch a smallmouth? Is the question.
Oh,
I've got a few on 8-inch glides, but not much more than that. 7-inch softies. I have a 7-inch mag slow I've done decently on, and then like 8-inch glides. But to be honest, I don't really go much higher than that. I do have one smallie on Mille Lacs actually on a Depths 250, but that was musky fishing and it was definitely a fluke. But consistently 8-inch glides, 7-inch softies. But the vast majority of the time I'm throwing like 6-7-inch glides and 6-inch softies kind of thing.
I have to say the 7.5-inch real prey carp, and that's what I placed in the first year of the tournament. But I've caught quite a few fish in Monticello on that 7.5-inch carp. Joe don't have that on the site now because he's redoing it to match the 5-inch look. But if you ever hit him up, you just say you want a 7.5-inch carp and he'll get it to you. I love that bait. It's done well for me over years, largemouth and smallmouth.
That's a bottom hook bait, right?
That's a bottom hook, yep. I think he offers it in a top hook too. I can't remember. What about you, Doug?
For me, it's the 7-inch realm. I mean, the TK is 6.5, right? The Metro's 7. I've had a lot of fish look at the bigger glides, like I said, the 9.5-inch retros and things like that. Swipe at them. Just have yet to hook up with one. It'll happen, but so yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's what I'm throwing mostly of, right? The 7-inch stuff.
What about you, Rich? You see, we always got to throw swim baits back to Rich.
Boy, that's. I'm trying to think if I've caught a smallmouth on a legitimate swim bait.
What about that old BLT? That Optimum, that was a big bait.
Yeah, that was maybe a 5 or 6-inch.
I think that was
way back when.
That was big.
Yeah, it was a line through bottom hook. Probably missed more than I caught, but that was a long time ago. But like, as far as like glides or any of that kind of stuff or hard baits, yeah, not much. Clay's been wanting to know about softy rods, so we talked. I feel like we've talked a little bit more about hard baits tonight. Now that Dave's here, since he's a big old softy, maybe pick some brains on softy rods, or what are you guys' setups for that kind of stuff?
So I stick with the Leviathan series. So the Omegas are really geared towards the hard baits. They have soft swims for the soft baits, and I've grown a liking to their heavy model for sure. I mean, and that's if you're talking a jig hook or a weedless. I mean, when you're talking a line through or anything with a treble, I mean, use your hard bait rod. You don't need a special rod for those baits. But yeah, if I need to send it home, I'm using that soft swim.
Right. So you're talking for hooks like that.
Hooks like that, or when you're talking like a Huddleston that has the built-in, jig hook or something, you need a stiffer rod. But.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I obviously I'm exclusively Leviathan at this point, but same thing. The Leviathan Alpha soft swim comes in a few different actions, and not a few different actions, 2 different powers, excuse me. But the heavy is going to handle the vast majority of what you need to throw. If you're throwing like an 8-inch HUD or bigger, you can throw it on the heavy, but the extra heavy is going to do you a little bit better there. But if you're more budget wise, like a Fury series will do a soft bait okay, as long as you're not going too big. And really, you could if you're pinching on what models you're getting, you just upsize your hard bait rod a little bit. Like if you're throwing like a 68 HUD, throwing that on like a extra heavy or something like that is a doable way to do it. Obviously, getting a dedicated soft bait rod is absolutely the way to go. And generally just a faster action, a little bit heavier power will get the job done. But Leviathan Alpha Soft Swim is a very, very difficult to beat rod.
Yeah, I agree that I have the Alpha 1.5 to 5 Leviathan. That's what I primarily throw on my baits for that 12-aught beast hook. It's hard to beat it. It closes really well after you give it a really hard hook set to get that beast hook in there. And especially if they're swimming towards you, you have enough power to get that fish in the hook set. And I also got an F5 at. It's almost there, but I always lean heavier into that Leviathan. But probably unlike the other two guys, I'll use that for exposed hooks too. I've fished a lot of different rods over the years that I just am accustomed to trying to work the fish to the rod. And now I'm getting more specific as the years go on.
Mm-hmm.
So, but for the weedless stuff, that Alpha and the Omega, I hear the Omega is just as nice, but I just happen to have the Alpha. And then for exposed hook, like a 1 to 4 ounce, most 1 to 4 ounce swim bait rods will cover the exposed hooks, the bottom trebles, the tops. Just set the hook with everything you got and keep reeling. You know, I just picked up a new the new Akuma, the custom black, because I got away from them after the Akuma B. I didn't appreciate the B models. I got a lot of the old original Guide Select. I picked that up on Tackle Warehouse on sale for $100. What a beautiful rod for $100. If anyone's looking for a rod, I think they're still on sale. If you're just getting into it, then when you want to treat yourself, move up to Leviathan.
Or do you guys do anything different for line with the bigger like hook, the beast hooks and the bigger jig hooks? Are you still throwing your 15-pound floor, or do you upsize that, Doug?
So I'm throwing with the bigger soft baits, I'm throwing that 20. But I'm still throwing fluoro. Alec mentioned that he was doing the braid to leader. I still feel like with that heavier fluoro, I'm getting that hook set I need, especially with the right rod.
Yeah, and I step up to 20 for that for the beast hook style baits, but I'm using Izuro XXX just because I'm cheap.
Mono,
like changing my line out, and I like the stretch of it too. Then I can set it as hard as I want.
Yeah. Oh, here's a question earlier from Minnesota Outlaw. Any tips for throwing big baits? Because he says he feels like I can throw a swim jig better than I can throw a swim bait.
Yeah, I think there's a couple factors there. I think the right rod does wonders for that. Having the right rod for the job. A lot of swim bait rods are pretty long, and the longer the better. In my opinion, obviously I'm a little bit biased, but having an 8-foot swim bait rod is just going to get you better cast distance. It's going to and having the right rod is going to load up a lot nicer on the casts as well. Line choice as well, just making sure you're throwing the right line. Like, big game absolutely gets the job done, but a cast on it's going to feel gross. And after a few outings, that memory is going to come back to bite you too. So having a line that's going to not have like horrible memory and do your due diligence on replacing that line when you need to. But it also, it just depends. Like they were mentioning earlier with the bunny. That bunny, you could spool a Tranks 400 no problem on that thing. It just casts like a bullet because it's shaped like a bullet. And there's just going to be some glides where it's just not going to cast the same. And you can have the right rod, the right line, the right reel, and it just is just going to not cast phenomenally. So I think there's a bunch of factors there, but realistically, it's just having the right equipment for the job.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think looking at using a 7/8 extra heavy fast doesn't sounds like a broomstick to me. Without knowing too many details, but also spool size, right? That's where a lot of people think, oh, you need these giant reels to handle these baits. That's not the case. You need the spool size to aid with the cast and the if you upsize your line and so forth. But spool size will definitely help you get some more distance.
Yeah, if you want to go up to 20, I think it's hard not to throw a 300, in my opinion. I'll throw, 15. I throw 15 the majority of the time, and I'm not afraid of my 200 size reels for that. But if I'm going up to 20, I can cast the 200 down. With a little bit of wind to my back, I can cast it right down. So, but I think the important thing when you are trying to get away with a conventional rod for swim bait rods, you're going to know pretty fast if it's not right for you. And if you're casting a 3/8 swim jig farther than you are your swim bait, it's not the right rod. It's not going to work out for you. You're going to get frustrated. I mean, there's nothing funner than casting a swim jig a mile and reeling it in, And you want to be able to do that with your swim baits too. I think another good thing, if we got Minnesota guys here, stop by the winter tournament or stop by the throwback tournament on Waconia. You're not going to have a guy there if you say, hey, I need some rod recommendations. At the throwback tournament, there's going to be 25 boats this year, I'm sure. There's not a guy there that's not going to share information with you, let you touch and feel some good swim bait rods. And then, of course, at the swim bait tournament. It's probably one of the questions I get emails about the most is rods. In my opinion, more than baits sometimes. It's people asking about rods. And what I end up doing is I invite them over to my place if they're local. Just stop by my place and look at some rods. Because it's a hard decision to make when you can't touch and feel them.
Dave's just willing to get anybody in the back of his van and let him touch rods. So
yeah.
Well, and the hard part is there's not a lot of places locally.
Or just get a hold of Doug. He's not busy.
Yeah. A lot of places locally. I mean, you just can't. There's a lot of great tackle shops, but there's very few that carry, this stuff. So we mentioned, I think, Waypoint and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you get your hands on it. But, yeah, I mean, one of those tournaments, somebody will let you, try theirs out, whatever. I mean, even as far as baits go, fishing our swim bait tournament, if you don't have the gear, we will get you baits to utilize for the tournament.
Yeah. Same with the winter tournament.
Dave brings tons of baits to the tournaments. I bring a box of wake walkers and fleas and whatever, So I guess as far as just trying this stuff out, reach just out to somebody locally, and we're all willing to help you out. So.
Right on. Yeah. Speaking of Waypoint, I'm surprised Gaff hasn't poked his head in the chat tonight.
I know.
What's his deal? We definitely talked about reels 200 to 300. What about? We didn't really touch on gear ratios. You guys got opinions on gear ratios for? Do you like a different gear ratio for a swim bait like this versus a glide versus maybe give guys some of your guys' rundown and high level thoughts on gear ratios for your swim baits?
I think for me, really, I love high gear for glides. I think is important just because the amount of control you're going to have with a high gear and what you can accomplish with a glide with a high gear is something that you can't accomplish it with a lower gear ratio. And also just if I could throw a high gear all the time, I probably would, just for fighting, fish fighting purposes. It's gonna make sure that you're never gonna lose that fish, or when you're throwing bigger baits, the odds of that fish, getting an advantage on you at some point in the fight is going to be a lot higher with the amount of mass they can throw around in their mouth. But if I could throw a high gear all the time, I would. The problem is I don't have the patience to crawl a softy with a high gear ratio. I just can't. My brain won't let me. It just doesn't happen. So on softies, I'll go low, and on softies, I go as low as I can. Just because a lot of times I am throwing softies very slow, keeping it in a strike zone for as long as possible, soaking it there and making sure it's moving, but moving as slow as possible. And my brain just can't handle doing that on the high gear. So really my soft bait rods are low as I can go. They're 5 gear. And then my pretty much everything else is a high gear, with the exception of there's a setup that I use for pretty much exclusively cranks and wakes, and I do have a low gear on that as well, just because I do like crawlers and wakes a lot as well. So those like pretty much topwater, soft baits, low gear, everything else high gear for me.
I prefer the higher end of the spectrum. I mean, I have some bigger reels that, run in the 6s, but I'm throwing a 7 and an 8. I mean, even with the weedless baits and stuff, I want to be able to take up line and frickin' set that hook. And, I don't play the fish. I mean, I grind them in, so I prefer those higher ratios, but 90% of my setups are 7 and 8.
Yeah, I think a 6.2 is a good medium for me, but I do have a low, like a 5.1, I think it is, for when it's perfectly calm out, and I'm mostly soft bait fishing, so I can just start crawling. And then if the wind's blowing, I'm working with the wind, then I'll pick up a higher speed reel, 7 point whatever the old Corrado is. But for glides, I like a higher. I like my old Corrado. I think it's a 7.2 or whatever it may be. But I do like changing the gear ratio for the wind I'm fishing. If it's perfectly calm, I'm picking up that slowest reel I have, so I can just crawl it on the bottom. So I'm all over the place. Probably 4 different ratios.
I just realized we're getting close to midnight. We should probably get that Metro up for grabs. It's getting late for those Beast Coasters, Metro. Huh? So let's see here.
Is it for only people that are still here?
Yeah. So what I was thinking is for the other set, I'll do a comment drawing. So people that listen or come in later, we'll do other
whatever you want to do.
That way it'll just give people a chance that didn't catch the whole thing, had to leave early, whatever, they can kind of come back, and we'll do a second chance for the second round of softies. But yeah, so this is courtesy of Throwback Baits. I think we've talked a little bit about their baits. There was some questions, I think. I'm sorry, I've tried to get through a lot of questions. We've had to skip over a few that where'd it go? Clay says he really wants to take lemonade bad.
Any bait specific or brand specific questions, shoot a message on Instagram, Facebook. I answer all those usually within 24 hours. So shoot a message if there's anything specific to Throwback or any questions in general. I'm happy to help.
Yeah. So a lot of things sell out. You said earlier, follow you on socials, sign up for the newsletter. Best way to hear about drops if you want to get in on the next one. Sean wants to know if there's any ETA on when Metro Glides might be around again.
Yeah, so we are currently just finished up the big pre-order we had for the remainder Pink Lemonades. Next drop will be some rosegill in probably 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll have a pile of those. And then I have a couple baits heading out to paint. We'll do small collabs with as well. So a few weeks we'll have that site restocked, but they go quick.
So hopefully for Valentine's Day for your special swimbaiter in your life.
Absolutely.
That's got to be a really hot ticket right around Valentine's Day. You guys must get a lot of requests for swimbaits for their special someones, right?
Oh yeah, around the holidays we do Christmas and stuff like that. But
It's a question from Will. What any thoughts on like the soft glides? Whether it's the Nessie or what, I forget, the Flag or whatever. Like, do you guys dabble with those at all, or?
I have not myself. You see these soft glides out here, and they have treble hooks. To me, I don't see. Other than maybe a little difference in action. I don't know. I haven't played with them too much. If I'm throwing a soft bait, I like the swimmers.
I haven't tried any of them yet. Not because I don't want to. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
I've thrown the Nessie, and I think I've thrown 2 sizes of them, and they swam horribly. Really not a fan. And then I've thrown both sizes of the Flag as well. And the both sizes of the Flag, unfortunately, my experience with the Flags was before they fixed the joint issue. So I threw both sizes back when the joint was just a soft joint and there was no like mesh. So the durability was trash. So, but I will say the action was awesome, and I do really like the idea of a soft glide, right? Because I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference, hard versus soft glide, because you're probably going to catch the same fish. However, if a fish is interacting with a soft glide and it gets a hold of it, and it's just the same thing as any other softie. They don't immediately, when they clamp down, they don't immediately know that it's not real, right? You've seen fish eat glides. They'll come up, they'll bite it, and almost as soon as they clamp down, that their mouth is wide open, thrashing. The one fish I did catch on a Flag, it was choked. So, but once again, the durability issues, those are fixed now. I'd say my favorite soft glide was the Osakana by, man, I don't remember who makes it. Is it Raid? It might be Raid.
Yeah.
Oh, it is the Raid. Yeah. So yeah, like you just said. So the Osakana is by far the most impressive to me. I like that a lot. I think it swims the best. I think it's a great size, especially for smallmouth. And the fact that they have a couple different options with hooks as well, so you can run one and have it be like a floater, or you can run 2, have it slow sink. I think the Raid is probably my favorite of them all.
I bought a Nessie last year and it never left my basement.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing.
Even putting it in the boat.
But that's like all your swim baits, Rich.
It's true. But that one never even made it out of the basement. Most of them at least get put in a box and then go in the boat and then don't get as much attention as they should. Brian says we need a HellaBass stream pre-order for Metro Glides.
Oh.
All right, we'll give it a few more minutes. I'll give one more minute to get in here. Meanwhile, James wants to know California Delta for glide, straight 40 to 50 pound braid or 25 fluoro to my braid.
I've never fished the Delta, James. I wish I could help you.
To me, I would be really leery about putting a good glide on 40 pound braid because I feel like it would dig in and you'd snap it off. Like if I'm going to go braid, I'm probably not going lower than 65. And I'm pretty good at leader knots for spinning rods, but I suck at them when it comes to big bait. So I don't trust myself with leaders. So I would go straight flow or straight mono personally.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking for trouble on swim baits when you're using straight 40 or 50 pound braid. I mean, you can get away with it for sure, but you're going to have to be so careful. It's not going to be worth it. I'd go to at least 65 or just straight mono or fluoro. But 40 pound braid on a glide bait is asking for trouble for sure.
Ilya Minotti says, have you fished with Jeff from Hookup yet? Alec.
No, I haven't. I've made soft plans with one of his buddies to do a couple of trips, but never. It hasn't come to fruition yet. I'm also horribly busy, but I haven't talked with Jeff. Honest, I don't think ever. Well, that's not true. I did talk to him at a lake once for a little while, but we don't have any sort of relationship really. Yeah, but I mean, Jeff is he knows Arizona extremely well. So I do see him relatively often, but not like personally.
I'm surprised only half the people here want to get in on the Metro Glide. There must be this half people are just watching and too scared. I don't know. That's interesting.
That's awesome. I mean, all power to them.
We're gonna hit the draw button here, so appreciate you guys throwing that bait in for the listeners and the watchers.
Absolutely.
Tim Grant. Oh, that's unfortunate that a Packer fan won that. Can we redraw?
Perfect.
Did I say that Packer fans are not eligible? Did I miss that in the fan fine print, Tim? No, congratulations, Tim.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah. If you know, contact at richlinger.com or HellaBass, Facebook, Instagram, DM me. I'll get you. That's uncalled for, Tim. We don't need that. Both teams flamed out unbelievably bad at the end of this year. So, but we'll have a second chance on the DC baits. So, how you guys will enter that is after this video is concluded, after the live's down, you can go to the on-demand version on YouTube. You'll have to go to YouTube. You can't go to Facebook. So if you're listening on Facebook or you're listening to the replay on YouTube, or if you're on the MP3, you're going to have to go to the YouTube video and leave a comment and just say like, I'm in, or Swimbait or something, just to let me know you want to be in the drawing. And then one of the streams in the next week or two, we'll do a draw. So that'll give a chance for anybody that wasn't here live or had to go to bed early or is listening to the podcast while they're running or fishing. They can, or they just didn't win the night. You got a chance when this is done to re-enter. But you guys got time for a few more questions? We'll make it an even 3 and call it at quarter after.
Absolutely.
We kept mine a little shorter last time. I think we only did 2.5.
Yeah. Well, we got more people to give their opinions. Like, there's more questions that we won't get to. Michael, who won earlier, said huge response on Swimbait Universe for another round of Leviathan throwback collab rods. Is that going to happen again?
Undetermined at this point. We did it. It was great. You know, I don't know. I guess nothing's set in stone. They're busy. We're busy.
Not saying yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, we did it. Gosh, it was a while back now. Did like 20 rods, and they went well. You know, but there has been a bit of a demand. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
Here's a quick one. Adventures of Pumpkin wants to know what's your go-to color for your Tiny Clash.
It depends where I'm fishing. I mean, they have a perch. I mean, it just works up here, right? The liquid gill, I don't know. They're a little harder to find. This was exclusive to Toxic Days. So that's like a transparent gill. I really like that one. But yeah, otherwise I'm throwing perch. Some of the flashier colors, they have a lot of good color options. They've been doing a good job staying in stock. A lot of different retailers are carrying them now. So whatever color's working in your area, snag it.
I think one of the fishier colors is, I can't get these untangled, but the WC.
Like a nacho. If they're stuck together, it's one bait.
Yeah. The WCZ colors, the working class zero colors, they both work awesome. This is the K9 and the TK in those colors. This is just an ultra fishy, just bait fish color. I mean, it's very standard, nothing too crazy, but super flashy, super bait fishy, can mimic really anything, and it gets slammed. I mean, and I know Doug's had success on a lot of different colors. So, yeah, he has a couple of baits that you think these ones are rash. Doug has a couple of baits that are even worse. So, and I watched him catch fish on at least 3 or 4 different colors of TK. So, they just make good colors. I mean, that's probably one of my favorite things about them. The paint won't last. The paint comes off in 2 seconds, but it was pretty before you threw it. That's for sure.
I mean, what's your guys' opinion? Like, the more rash, the better they get 8?
Oof. I mean,
I think it's a sign that they're getting 8, and I don't think it affects it in a negative way. You know, you have those guys that had that spook that's now bone color, you know, and just because all the paint's gone and it's their go-to. And I guess I feel a little bit, I mean, the baits I have, especially the TKs that don't have any paint left on them, it's because I've caught on them. you know, and I'm going to keep throwing it because I've caught on them. So
I just wish we could all come to a consensus on this. Then I could quit painting soft baits. You just
Color
throw them
matters.
out there, and everyone.
Your paint holds up too good on you. The hook rash doesn't really show on those.
Yeah, just make it so it doesn't matter.
yeah.
So I don't like that theory. I don't go with that theory, but you'll have a certain hard bait that gets all rashed up and bit into pieces. The paint's coming off. It's the mojo of that bait. I mean, you could get a bait from the same garage builder, same manufacturer, and never have the same results. It's the same with our rattle traps, our favorite crankbaits. There's just something happened at the factory that day that gave it that mojo. But I don't think it's the paint.
Yeah, I guess as far as color goes, I'm a big, being up here in the north, a lot of our waters are clear. I'm very big on natural colors. I mean, everything that I'm typically, even for smallmouth, I mean, we have the bright, flashy colors. People love them. But I like the natural colors.
I'm the same way.
I agree.
Things like pink lemonade, super natural.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have not caught enough fish on any of my swim baits to rash them out. But like, as far as like OG Vixens and yellow magic poppers and like lipless baits that like they're just chewed and they're awesome. And like even swim jigs and chatterbaits. Sometimes it seems like when they're down to their last 4 strings of a skirt that like they ate the best, right? I don't know.
Yeah, 100%.
Favorite clash configuration.
Ooh,
Yeah. So I'm a pretty diehard deep lip V-tail kind of guy. I mean, there's a ton of ways to fish these baits. You can fish them as a glide. You can fish them. My thought process with that deep lip is I'm throwing that. I can fish effectively like a deep 110. I can fish it down 12 feet of water. Them smallmouth on Mille Lacs. A lot of times a year they like that depth, depending on the clarity. But if I'm fishing shallow water too, I'm using that deep lip and grinding. I mean, Alec was up. I caught a big one last year. It was in like 6 feet of water, and I had the deep lip on, and I was grinding the bottom. So whether I'm fishing 2 feet of water or I'm 12 feet of water, I'm using that deep lip. Might be missing fish that way, but it's just my confidence thing.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on which bait you're talking about. I mean, for me, you'll see a lot of guys like both the TK and the K9 in glide mode, which means no lip, and they'll have the whale tail up generally, or the transfer tail on it, which is a different tail than it comes with stock. You'll see a lot of guys like the glide version of that. I personally never throw any. Well, that's not true. I throw the frenzy in glide mode, but I throw everything in crank for the most part. The only exceptions are the frenzy and the ghost, and even the frenzy I throw in crank mode a lot of times too. But the I think the when you have a K9 or a TK in glide mode, there's hundreds of other baits that glide better than they do, right?
Maybe just like, because I'm guessing there's probably people that don't even know that the Clash is like this multifaceted bait that does all these things. Maybe could you even just like demonstrate a little bit of like what they're talking about?
Yeah. So I can't show you in. I glue my lips in, so that's how much I don't. That's how much I don't throw them any other way. But this is the TK. Yeah. So it has a tail you can take out and a lip you can take out. And this TK, you can throw it in a glide mode where you take out the lip basically. And this is all their baits for pretty much. And you can change the variation of the tail. So it's either points up like this, or you can flip it so that it points down. You can put in a different tail for it. There's like a bunch of different lips you can put in there. You can put in a wake lip. You can put in a deep crank lip, tons of different lips. But I throw it pretty much stock, and I throw it in just this crank like this. And the reason why is because I think it excels as like like Doug mentioned this earlier, but I think it excels as like basically a giant jerk bait. That's where I think its position is. I think it's a mediocre glide. I think it's a mediocre crank. I think it's pretty much mediocre everything except for when you use it as a giant jerk bait. And that's the way I use the TK like that. I use the K9 like that, which is just the bigger version. Same thing. I use this pretty much stock. I also weight them to suspend because they do a really good job of walking. You can literally like walk them in place when you have them suspend. That I think they do really well at. And then there's the
standard lip glued in with the tail up.
Is what I do. I wouldn't glue your lips in if I were you. I just do it because I don't throw them any other way, and I'm sick and tired of losing lips, to be honest. But yeah, normal like stock lip, stock tail, whale tail up, and then I use it as like a giant jerk bait functionally, and I'll walk it as well, which I think gets a lot of bites. And then there's the ghost, which is kind of the next size up, and I think this gets up to like 13 inches. And I use it 2 ways. I use this in a deep lip, which I've caught fish on, and I also use it without the lip in like a swimmer mode. And that's this. These are 2 different tail sports. Those I'm talking about. There's the whale tail, and then here's the V tail. So 2 different kinds of tails there. But this is a swimmer, and this is like one of the most fun baits to fish of all time. I mean, it just looks ridiculous on the water. And then this is the deep lip. This thing will get down. I mean, I have this on scope at like 16, 17 feet kind of thing. It gets down super deep. It's huge, and I don't fish the ghost for bass, to be honest with you. I fish them for muskies all the time, but not for bass. And then there's the last one in the series. This is the Frenzy. So that's the difference between this is a 13-inch bait, and then this is the Frenzy. And this I use exclusively in a glide mode. I've got 3 muskies on this now. I use it exclusively in a glide mode. You can see it's pretty decently rashed up. You can see some tooth marks on it. But this is an awesome glide, and then everything else, it's just really bad, to be honest with you. Like it's unfishable in some of the configurations, like wholeheartedly unfishable. But in glide mode, it's crazy. It looks just ridiculous, and it's 17 inches. And you throw a 17-inch glide in the body water that has muskies, and they're gonna notice.
I feel like Alec could have done an hour or 2 just on Clash baits.
I could talk about Swimbaits all day, every day for the next 2 weeks and still be just.
When Ryan's question came up about your favorite configuration, your eyes lit up extra like tonight.
Dude, and honestly, I used to tell people I do not like DRT baits because I didn't appreciate them. Like when I first started, I was, I said it's like a mediocre at pretty much everything. I fished it the way that everybody told me to fish them, and I was like so unimpressed. I was like, there's just like I have 10 other baits that do this, whatever it's trying to do, way better. And then I spent some time with them, and I kind of realized they have this niche of being like a phenomenal jerk bait, and there's not really any baits on the market that do it as well that they do, and that's because of the customizability. It's because of the way that they're made. It's because of the ABS nature, really. Like making a consistent ABS bait for like a big jerk bait like that would be really difficult to do. So they have a lot of advantages, and spending time with the right bait. I used to tell people I actively dislike DRT baits, and now I some of these baits I've caught some awesome fish on, and I've caught a ton of fish on some of these baits. So it's just a matter of spending time with the bait, learning it as much as I can, and not taking what everybody else says too seriously, and going out and figuring it out for yourself is probably that's probably one of the biggest things I can tell people is all the stuff we've said tonight is valuable. There's information there to be had, and it's great stuff to get started. But really, the best thing you can do to get good with swim baits is teach yourself and just go in blind and just figure it out solo. Figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I see there's questions have come in if you guys came in late about rods, leaders for toothy, pikes, line. Like we definitely like go back and listen, do yourself a favor. There's been a ton of juicy stuff for the past 3 hours. So if I didn't answer your question recently, it's probably because we touched on it once or twice earlier. So I think we're in a good spot. Please check out Leviathan, Throwback, DC Swimbaits for putting in the time. I think we got one good question here to kind of wrap this up here. I think this is a good one. What's one big bait? If you can only throw one, something you guys don't produce, like what's your favorite or your go-to base and something that's not, something that's produced by you guys?
Mine's the DRT. I mean, TK mostly. I do throw K9 have a love-hate relationship with the K9, but it's such a universal bait. With all those options Alec just showed you. If I'm not throwing one of our baits, that's pretty much my go-to. Unless I'm on the soft bait side. I would have to say a 7-inch soft bait of almost any brand is hard to beat. So
I got to go with a hard bait and the soft bait on this one. For the soft bait,
we'll allow it.
That I don't make is got to be the 6.5-inch real prey alewife shad in bottom hook. And I won't go into why I love bottom hook bait so much, but that bait in Minnesota, because I've been fishing it so long, has just produced so many fish for me, and it'll always have a place in my box. For a hard bait, I got lucky enough to test out one of True Glide's baits, and he's got a gill. I think it's ready, but I got what I think is called the Pro model on it, and it's got to be one of the more stable gill baits I've ever fished in my life. And I've really had a lot of time, not a lot of time, the times I've been to Monticello this year on the river, and I really appreciate that bait. Fished as a blank last year, testing it, and finally got it painted up, but it produced a lot of fish as just a plain white gill. I really think that bait's gonna fill a niche for me that I've been looking for in a gill for a while now.
For me, soft bait wise, man, this is an impossible question for me. But probably and this is not necessarily, my answers to this are probably not necessarily like what I'm using that's most effective. It's probably just what I enjoy fishing most, if I'm going to answer this. Because I think most effective, I think Doug kind of hit the nail on the head. Because having a TK or a K9 where you can just do whatever you want to with it, if you're truly limited to one bait, is the smart answer in terms of like effectiveness. But like a soft bait, I would say there's a lowbrow dead slow. It's probably my favorite soft bait of all time. It's not like the craziest bait in the world. There's not like a reason why it's amazing in any way, shape, or form. But it's a 7-inch soft bait that just gets hammered, and I've caught a ton of fish on it, and I love it. Phenomenal soft bait. It swims at any speed, and it's a boot tail and not like a wedge tail, which is a big deal. And then hard bait wise, I'd say, there's a big list of like 7-inch, 8-inch glide baits I could say there. But really, if you put pretty much any 7, 8-inch glide bait in my hands, I'm going to be a very, very happy guy. Things that come to mind are like the Metro is a phenomenal bait. I love a Chad or a Legend, a Piz Drift, but really any of that stuff, a 7, 8-inch glide bait is going to make me very happy.
Good stuff. And I guess piggybacking on the DRT stuff and the TK and the K9, like I actually did a show with Austin Neary probably a year ago, and he goes in deep on why if you're going to spend money, like you should get a K9 or a Tiny Clash and all the things you can do with it. It's like if you're going to spend $120 or whatever, like all the things you can do with it. So he made a pretty compelling case at that time. Man, we could keep answering questions. Most of us have to work tomorrow. We'll probably just do a part 2, maybe this summer, fall. Maybe we'll come up with something. Maybe I'll show up at a Swimbaits event. Maybe we'll do a live stream from we'll figure something out. I had a great time with you guys. I appreciate you guys making time and geeking out on big baits with us.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having us.
And I think all these guys, if you look them up on socials, I think I tagged some of them in my stories and stuff. Like they're all probably happy to answer bait questions and talk fishing and that kind of stuff. And same with the company. You can probably go on Throwback, you can go on DC or write all these accounts and ask questions. And if you can't get a hold of them, send me a note. I'll put you in touch. So
appreciate it.
Thanks, Rich.
As always, here to help you guys catch more big bass and suck less.